The retired Navy SEAL didn't hear her at first. He was 3 blocks from home, Ranger moving quiet at his left heel, when the sound registered. Small wheels on cracked pavement, struggling, fighting for every inch. He turned. A 9-year-old girl in a wheelchair was chasing him down an empty Oregon street, alone, terrified, pushing with everything her small hands had left. Most people would have assumed she was lost. Ranger didn't move. The dog simply stopped, turned around, and refused to take another step forward. That moment cost Cole Maddox exactly 40 seconds. It changed 4 lives. If this story moves you, hit subscribe. Drop your city and country in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. Every like tells me to keep going. Don't miss what comes next. The morning had started the way most of Cole Maddox's mornings started, quietly and without ceremony. 5:40 a.m. Coffee, black, no sugar. 2 eggs scrambled in a cast iron pan he'd owned for 11 years. A specific routine he didn't examine too closely because routines were the scaffolding that kept certain kinds of men upright. He knew that about himself. He'd stopped pretending otherwise. He lived in a narrow 2-story house on the eastern edge of Cedar Hollow, Oregon, a town of maybe 6,000 people tucked between a ridge of Douglas firs and a river. Nobody kayaked anymore because the outfitter had closed during the recession. The kind of town where everybody knew who you were, but very few people actually knew you. Cole had moved there 14 months ago for exactly that reason. He poured a second cup of coffee and looked out the kitchen window. The yard was empty. A cracked concrete driveway. A rusted basketball hoop he kept meaning to take down. Leaves beginning to turn copper and rust along the fence line, which meant October was almost done. Which meant the rain would get serious soon, which was fine. Cole liked rain. Rain made the world quieter. Ranger was watching him from across the kitchen. The dog was a Belgian Malinois, 10 years old, with a face that had seen too much, and a body that still carried itself like it hadn't. Black muzzle now going fully gray. A small permanent scar along his left ear where shrapnel had caught him during a building breach in Helmand Province in 2019. He'd been cleared for retirement 6 months after Cole was. They'd been assigned together as a coincidence of paperwork, and they'd been together ever since, which no longer felt like a coincidence to Cole. "Yeah," Cole said. "I know." Ranger stood up. Cole rinsed his mug, pulled on a jacket, clipped the leash to Ranger's harness, and they went out into the autumn morning. Cedar Hollow woke up slowly. The bakery on Clement Street had its lights on. A delivery truck idled outside the hardware store. A woman Cole recognized but had never spoken to walked a terrier on the opposite sidewalk and did not look up. That was fine. Cole didn't need her to. He'd heard, in the loose, second-hand way you hear things about yourself in a small town, what people said. Quiet guy. Keeps to himself. Military. Something happened over there. Don't ask. The scars on his forearms were visible in short sleeves, which he didn't wear anymore, but people had seen them in the summer. There was a slight catch in his stride on cold mornings. A hip replacement 2 years ago. A souvenir from a vehicle rollover outside Mosul. He walked a large dog with a military-style harness and a bearing that was trained into his body so deep that no amount of civilian life had fully softened it. Shoulders back, scan left, scan right, note exits, note movement, process and move. He didn't do it on purpose anymore. It was just how he moved through the world. People in Cedar Hollow had decided he was unfriendly, or broken, or both. Most of them kept a comfortable distance. Cole had not gone out of his way to correct them. Ranger patted at his left heel, matching his pace without instruction. No tension on the leash, the dog knew the route. Down Whitmore, left on Clement, past the hardware store, past the bakery, down the slope past the small strip of shops that had maybe a 40% occupancy rate these days. Then home. 3.5 miles. 40 minutes if Cole wasn't rushing, which he never was. He passed the flower shop at 7:22 a.m. I knew it was a flower shop because there were buckets of cut stems out front and a hand-painted sign in the window that read, "Willow Lane Flowers" in green cursive. He didn't know anything else about it. He'd passed it maybe 60 times and never once gone inside. He was half a block past it when Ranger stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Dead. Cole felt the leash go taut. He turned and looked at the dog. Ranger wasn't looking at him. He was looking back down the street, head tilted slightly, ears forward, completely still. The posture Cole recognized from 100 operational moments. The dog wasn't alarmed. He was listening to something. Cole heard it a second later. Wheels. Small ones, struggling against a sidewalk crack. And then a voice, high, breathless, fighting to project. Sir, please, wait, She was maybe 30 yards back. 9 years old, though she looked younger at first glance, small-framed, with brown hair pulled into a ponytail that had come half undone, wearing a yellow jacket that was slightly too big for her. The wheelchair was not a light one. It was an older model, heavy-framed, the kind that required real effort to push on anything other than a perfectly flat surface. The sidewalk on Clement Street was not perfectly flat. Her hands were shaking on the push rims. Her face, Cole registered this before anything else. Her face was not the face of a child who was lost or confused. It was the face of a child who had made a decision and was executing it with everything she had, and was terrified that she'd run out of body before she ran out of street. Cole didn't move toward her. He waited, which was the right call. Closing distance fast on a frightened kid never helped. Ranger, however, took 3 deliberate steps back in her direction and sat down. She reached them, stopped, chest heaving, both hands white-knuckled on the rims. Up close, Cole could see tear tracks on her cheeks. Not fresh, but recent. And below that jaw, the set expression of someone who had decided not to cry again until the situation was handled. "You okay?" Cole said. She shook her head. "My mom." The words came out in pieces, between breaths. At the shop. She got dizzy, and she couldn't stand up, and she told me to get help, but I didn't have my phone, and I saw you, and..." She stopped, looked at Ranger. The dog was watching her with a calm, steady attention that seemed to interrupt her panic slightly, the way an anchor interrupts drift. "Is he going to bite me?" "No." Ranger moved to her side and rested his chin on the arm of her wheelchair, just placed it there gently, like he was checking in. The girl blinked. "Oh," she said quietly. Some of the terror went out of her face, replaced by something more complicated. "He's warm." "He does that," Cole said. "Tell me about your mom. She fall?" "No, she was standing behind the counter, and then she just grabbed it and said she needed to sit down, and her face went white, and I got scared, and she said, 'Go get someone, Sophie, go now,' and..." "Okay." Cole's voice was level. "What's the shop?" "Willow Lane, back there." She pointed. "The flowers." Cole was already moving. "What?" Rachel Bennett was sitting on the floor behind the sales counter when Cole pushed through the door, Ranger moving in beside him. The shop was small, long and narrow, coolers along one wall stacked with buckets of dahlias and snapdragons and flowers. Cole couldn't name, a workbench with florist tape and wire, the smell of cut stems and wet earth hanging in the air. She'd managed to drag a low stool close, and she was leaning against the counter, one hand pressed to the side of her face, the other flat on the floor to steady herself. Late 30s. Dark circles that went past a single bad night. Clothes that were clean but worn. A woman who had spent a long time running at a pace that wasn't sustainable. She looked up when the door opened, and her first expression was relief. Then something else. A flicker of alarm, maybe at Cole specifically, at the size of him, at Ranger, at the general category of stranger, before she got it back under control. "Sophie found you," Rachel said. "She did." Cole crouched down, keeping his movements slow and visible. "You dizzy? Chest pain? Numbness anywhere?" "Just dizzy. I didn't eat this morning. I do this sometimes." She said it quickly, the way people say things they're embarrassed about. "I'm fine. I just needed to..." "When'd you last eat?" A pause. "Yesterday lunch." Cole didn't say anything to that. He looked around the shop, found a small back room through an open doorway, saw a mini fridge. "You have food back there?" "Yes, some." He went and found half a container of yogurt and a bruised apple and brought them back. He also found a glass, filled it with water from the small sink, and set everything on the counter within her reach. Rachel looked at it, then at him, then at the yogurt, like it had said something she hadn't expected. "You didn't have to..." "Eat the yogurt first." Sophie had wheeled herself through the door. She stopped just inside and watched her mother with the focused, measuring look of a child who had been watching an adult too closely for too long. "Mom." "I'm okay, Bug." "You said that Tuesday." Rachel closed her eyes briefly. Cole pulled out his phone and called for medical assistance, not because he was certain she needed it, but because the decision about whether she needed it should be made by someone with equipment. Rachel started to protest. He didn't argue with her. He just said, "They'll check you out and clear you. If everything's fine, they leave. 10 minutes. She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. While they waited, Cole stayed near the door and said very little, which was comfortable for him and seemed to be comfortable for Rachel, who didn't look like a woman with a lot of energy for small talk. Sophie, however, had wheeled herself next to Ranger and was scratching behind his ears with the careful deliberateness of a child who'd been told her whole life to be gentle with things. Ranger's tail moved once, then again. "What's his name?" Sophie asked. "Ranger." "Was he in the military?" "Yeah." "Like you?" Cole looked at her. "What makes you think I was military?" Sophie shrugged, but it wasn't a careless shrug. It was the shrug of a kid who'd already worked something out and was being diplomatic about it. "The way you walk. And you knew what questions to ask my mom. And your dog has a scar on his ear and he doesn't act like regular dogs." She paused. "Also, you have a tattoo on your wrist that looks like a Navy thing." Cole glanced at his wrist. SEAL Team insignia, worn and faded. He'd stopped noticing it years ago. "Sharp," he said. "My dad was Army," she said. "Before he left." She said it the way kids say things they've processed until they're not painful anymore. Matter of fact, like reporting weather. Like it had been true so long it was just geography now. Cole didn't respond to that. He just watched Ranger submit to Sophie's scratching with an expression of profound patience that was very slightly undone by the involuntary tail wag he kept trying to suppress. The paramedics came, checked Rachel's blood pressure, low, confirmed dehydration and likely a blood sugar crash, advised her to eat regular meals and get seen by her GP if it happened again, and left within 15 minutes. Rachel stood up slowly, and Cole watched her take her weight on both feet before he stopped watching. "Thank you," Rachel said. "Sincerely. I know this was not a problem." "It is, actually. You didn't have to stay." Ranger didn't want to leave. She looked at the dog, who was now sitting next to Sophie's chair like he was assigned there. Something shifted in Rachel's expression. Not quite a smile, but something adjacent to it. Tired and real. Cole was about to say goodbye when he noticed the papers. They were pushed back behind the counter, which was why he could see them. The counter was open on this side, and he was standing at the right angle. A stack of envelopes, rubber banded together. Several of them had "past due" printed in red across the top. And beneath that, a single sheet he recognized by format. A medical invoice, itemized, with a very long list of line items and a total at the bottom that made the stack of past due envelopes suddenly make sense. He didn't stare. He looked away. But he'd already seen the number. Rachel was watching him. She knew he'd seen it. Her jaw tightened fractionally, and she pulled the papers down off the counter and tucked them below the register, out of sight. "We manage," she said. It wasn't defensive. It was just a statement of position, delivered clearly, from someone who was very accustomed to delivering it. Cole looked at her, then at Sophie, who was watching her mother with that same too-old attention. "I know," Cole said. He clipped Ranger's leash. He said goodbye to Sophie, who waved with both hands. He pushed out through the door into the October morning. He made it half a block. Stopped. Stood on the sidewalk with one hand on Ranger's harness and looked at the middle distance for a moment, while a delivery truck rumbled past. The invoice total he'd seen was $14,400. He stood there for another few seconds. Then he took out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in 4 months. It rang twice. "Maddox." The voice on the other end was gravel and Georgia, deeply familiar. "You'd better be calling because something interesting happened." "Marcus," Cole said, "I need to talk to you about something." A pause. "Define something." Cole exhaled. "There's a woman and her kid. The kid's in a wheelchair. They're in trouble, and they don't know how much yet. And I need to figure out if our guys still have a fundraiser network or if we let that go." Another pause, longer. "Our guys always have a fundraiser network, Maddox." Marcus's voice shifted. Less gravel, more something else. "You know that." "Yeah," Cole said. "I know." He put the phone in his pocket and started walking. Ranger moved at his left heel, matching his pace, and did not look back at the flower shop. Cole did not go back the next day. He went back 3 days later, because he is not the kind of man who announces intentions he isn't sure about, and he'd needed 3 days to be sure. He brought nothing with him except Ranger, because showing up with anything would have been presumptuous, and presumption is a form of arrogance he'd spent years training out of himself. The shop was open. Rachel was behind the counter, wrapping a bouquet with the competent, slightly mechanical movements of someone who could do the work in their sleep. She looked up when the door opened, and her expression ran through several things quickly before it settled. "You're back," she said. Ranger wanted to check on Sophie. "Sophie's at school." "Then I'm wasting his time," Cole said. "I had a question, if that's okay." Rachel set down the flowers. "Okay." "The therapy invoices. How far behind are you?" A silence. "That's not really—" "I'm not asking to be in your business," Cole said. "I'm asking because I have people I can call. Former teammates. We put together a community fund 3 years ago for a widow in Medford. We've done it twice since. Nobody's being charitable." He used the word deliberately, neutrally. "It's just guys who know how to organize and who have some time." Rachel stared at him. "Why?" she said flatly. "Why would you do that?" "Because your daughter pushed a 30-pound wheelchair 3/4 of a block on a cracked sidewalk to get help for you, and she never once thought about not doing it." He paused. "Ranger doesn't give that reaction to people who haven't earned it. He gave it to Sophie in about 12 seconds. Rachel looked at the flowers in her hands. A long moment passed. "I'm not good at asking for help," she said. "I know. I'm not asking you to ask. I'm asking you to let me make a phone call." Cole's voice was steady. "That's all." Rachel set the bouquet on the counter. Outside, a car passed slowly. The coolers hummed. "One phone call," she said finally. Her voice was very controlled. "One phone call." She nodded. Cole walked out, pulled out his phone, and called Marcus again. That night, at a table in a bar 40 miles away, 6 former SEALs and 2 Marine veterans sat down and started making a list. They had no idea what was coming. Neither did Rachel. Neither, for that matter, did the man who was about to arrive in Cedar Hollow with a letter and a claim on everything Cole had just set in motion. Marcus Deal arrived in Cedar Hollow on a Thursday, driving a 12-year-old pickup that burned oil and had a cracked left taillight, which was exactly the kind of vehicle Marcus drove because Marcus had no interest in impressing anyone with anything that wasn't operational. He was 44 years old, built like a man who had never stopped PT, with a shaved head and a jaw that looked like it had been formed by someone who took the concept of jaw very seriously. He had a trident tattoo on his left forearm and a small white scar bisecting his right eyebrow from a training accident in Coronado in 2009 that he referred to as a disagreement with a doorframe. He was one of the best operational planners Cole had ever worked with, and he was also the kind of man who brought homemade cornbread to organizational meetings, which threw people off enough that they tended to agree with him faster. He showed up at Cole's door at 8 in the morning with a thermos of coffee and a yellow legal pad. "Walk me through it," Marcus said, sitting at the kitchen table with Ranger examining him carefully from 6 feet away. Cole walked him through it. Marcus listened without interrupting, which was one of his skills. He wrote things on the legal pad, not notes exactly, more like the shorthand of a man organizing logistics in real time. Cole talked for maybe 12 minutes. When he finished, Marcus capped his pen. "The therapy debt," Marcus said, 14.4. "That's what I saw. Could be more." "Insurance situation?" "Partial coverage. I don't know the specifics. Rachel hasn't exactly opened the books." "She will," Marcus said. "Once she sees we're not trying to run her life." He looked at the legal pad. "How's the kid doing? Physically?" "Making progress. Sophie told me she's been in PT for 2 years. Her mobility's improved, but she needs consistent sessions, which costs money, and she needs the chair maintained, which also costs money, and Rachel's been cutting one to fund the other." Marcus made a sound that wasn't quite a word. "And the shop?" "Running. Barely. She's good at what she does. The shop's not failing because she's bad at it. It's failing because one person cannot run a retail business, raise a kid with medical needs, manage insurance claims, coordinate therapy appointments, and still have enough left to handle anything unexpected." Cole paused. "There's no margin. Anything that goes sideways takes the whole thing with it." Marcus nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Fundraiser structure, outreach to the network. You've got contacts at the VFW in Ashland, the American Legion in Grants Pass, And Danny Reyes is still doing the veteran community liaison work out of Portland, right? Danny's still at it, yeah. I want this done through proper channels, Marcus. Transparent accounts, documented donations, receipts. Nothing informal. Marcus looked at him. You think I've ever done it any other way? No, Cole said. I just want to say it out loud. Marcus almost smiled. Still running your pre-mission brief even when it's a bake sale. It's not a bake sale. No, Marcus agreed more quietly. It's not. He picked up his coffee and looked out the kitchen window at the backyard, at the rusted basketball hoop and the Douglas firs beyond the fence, and Cole could see him already building the thing in his head. The framework, the sequence, the personnel assignments. Give me 10 days, Marcus said. 10 days. I'll need Rachel to agree to it formally. She needs to be part of the decision-making or she'll feel like it's charity and shut it down. I know. And you need to be the one to talk to her, not me. She knows you. Cole was quiet for a moment. She doesn't really know me, he said. She let you make the phone call, Marcus said. In my experience, that's most of it. Wow. Cole went back to Willow Lane that afternoon. The shop was between customers. Rachel was in the back workroom with the door half open, doing something with wire and a block of green foam. Cole knocked on the door frame. She looked up. A strand of dark hair had come loose from where she'd pinned it, and she pushed it off her face with the back of her wrist, which left a small green smear above her eyebrow that she didn't know was there. Hey, she said. Hey, you have a few minutes? Couple. She kept working. Talk while I do this. I've got an arrangement due at 3. Cole leaned in the doorway and explained what Marcus had proposed. He kept it factual, the structure, the transparency, the documentation. He didn't try to make it sound like anything other than what it was. He also didn't soften it or dress it up, because Rachel Bennett was clearly a person who could detect softening and dressing up from considerable distance and found it insulting. She worked while he talked. Her hands didn't slow down. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Who are these people? She said. Your team. Former SEALs, mostly. A couple of Marines, good people. Marcus ran logistics for our squadron for 6 years. He's organized 3 of these, all of them clean, all of them documented. The families involved chose what they accepted and what they didn't. And what do they get out of it? The organizing? Nothing. Cole paused. That's not entirely true. They get to feel useful. That matters when you've been trained for a very specific kind of work and you're not doing it anymore. Rachel looked at him then, directly, from across the workroom. Something in the way he said it seemed to register differently than the rest. How long have you been out? She asked. 3 years. Is it hard? A beat. Sometimes, Cole said. She nodded, like that was the right answer, or at least an honest one, and went back to her arrangement. Tell your friend Marcus I'll talk to him, she said. But I want to see the structure before anything goes public, and I choose what Sophie's name is associated with. Understood. And I need it on record that this is a one-time thing. I don't want Sophie growing up thinking. She stopped, tried again. She's going to do things on her own. She already does. I need her to see this as help from good people in a hard moment, not as. I don't want her to think of herself as someone who needs rescuing. Cole was quiet for a second. You can frame it exactly that way, he said, because that's exactly what it is. Rachel's jaw moved slightly. She nodded once, tightly, and turned back to the foam block and the wire. Cole left her to it. Marcus met Rachel 2 days later at the shop, after closing. He brought the legal pad and a printed one-page organizational framework, and because he was Marcus, a container of cornbread. Cole wasn't there for the meeting. That had been Marcus's suggestion, which Cole had recognized as tactically correct. Rachel needed to own the conversation, and Cole's presence would make it about Cole. He heard about it from Marcus that evening, on the phone. She's sharp, Marcus said. I know. She asked better questions about the fund structure than half the municipal contacts I've dealt with. She wanted to know the legal framework, the reporting mechanism, who held the account, what the disbursement process looked like. A pause. She also made me move the cornbread off her work table because it was too close to some flowers she was prepping. How'd you take that? I moved the cornbread. Maddox, she's got 16 months of back medical invoices. She's been paying what she can and rolling the rest forward, and it's compounding. We're not looking at 14.4, we're looking at closer to 22,000 once you factor in the equipment maintenance and the missed PT sessions she had to cancel. Cole was quiet. She doing okay? Marcus asked. She's functioning, Cole said. She's been functioning for a long time. That's different from okay. Yeah. Marcus didn't say anything for a moment. She told me Sophie's the one who wanted to keep the shop open. After Rachel had the first health episode last year, Rachel was going to close it. Sophie told her not to. How old was Sophie when that happened? 8. Cole sat with that for a second. We do this right, he said. We always do it right, Marcus said. That's not even a sentence you need to say. I know. Cole exhaled. 10 days, you said. 9 now. Get some sleep, Maddox. You look terrible. You haven't seen me. I don't need to. The fundraiser came together the way Marcus built things. Not flashy, just solid. The Cedar Hollow VFW agreed to host. The Grants Pass American Legion put the word out through their newsletter. Danny Reyes shared the fund link through his veteran network in Portland, which had more reach than most people expected. The local response surprised Cole. Not the veteran network. That part he'd expected. But Cedar Hollow itself turned out. The woman who walked the terrier and never made eye contact donated $40. The owner of the hardware store set out a donation jar and matched whatever went in it. A retired teacher Cole had never met drove to the VFW specifically to write a check because, as she explained to Marcus, she'd known Sophie through the school's community reading program. And Sophie had the best book recommendations of anyone she'd encountered, which the teacher said with a conviction that suggested she meant it entirely. Within 6 days, they had covered the outstanding medical invoices. Within 9, they had raised enough to fund 8 months of uninterrupted physical therapy and cover a full-service overhaul for Sophie's wheelchair from a certified rehabilitation equipment provider in Eugene. Marcus handled the disbursement documentation personally, with a precision that would have satisfied an IRS audit. Cole was not present at the formal handover. Rachel had asked him not to be. It's easier for me if it's Marcus, she told him, at the flower shop the morning before. I feel like I have to. I don't know. With you, I feel like I have to keep it together. Cole didn't know exactly what to do with that, so he just nodded. That's fine, he said. It's not a bad thing, she said quickly. It's just... She stopped. You're very calm. It makes me want to be calm, and right now I think I need to not be calm for about 20 minutes. Then don't be calm, Cole said. It's not a requirement. She laughed. It was short and a little ragged and clearly surprised her because she pressed her lips together right after like she was recapturing it. Cole walked out of the shop and gave her and Marcus the space. He walked 3 blocks east and sat on a bench near the river with Ranger and watched the water, which was moving slowly and catching the October light in a way that was almost irritatingly beautiful given the general pragmatism of the morning. Ranger put his head on Cole's knee. Yeah, Cole said. They sat there for a while. Sophie's first uninterrupted month of physical therapy started on a Tuesday. Her therapist was a woman named Gail Prescott, mid-50s, who ran a small clinic in Cedar Hollow's medical complex and had a professional manner that was both brisk and warm, which Sophie responded to immediately. Gail sent Rachel a brief update after the first session. Sophie's upper body strength was good. Her core engagement had improved significantly since her initial assessment 2 years ago, and her endurance on the parallel bars was better than expected. Rachel showed the update to Cole the following Saturday when he stopped by the shop with Ranger. She handed him her phone without comment, like she wasn't sure how to introduce the gesture, and watched him read it. He handed the phone back. That's good news, he said. It's really good news, Rachel said. Gail said if Sophie stays consistent, she might be ready to try a power assist attachment within the year. Not a full power chair, just an add-on that takes some of the load off her hands on inclines. She paused. Sophie's been pushing that chair uphill to school twice a week. I didn't know. She didn't tell me. Cole looked at her. She didn't want you to worry, he said. Rachel's expression did something complicated. She turned and straightened a bucket of sunflowers that didn't need straightening. She's 9, Rachel said quietly. She shouldn't be managing my worry. Cole didn't answer that because there wasn't an answer to it that was also useful. It was just true, and true things sometimes need space rather than response. Sophie herself appeared 20 minutes later, pushed through the back door by a school friend's parent who'd given her a ride, backpack across her lap, reporting at speed on a social studies project about Oregon's logging history that she'd been assigned to lead, which she seemed to regard as both an honor and a significant burden. She stopped when she saw Cole. "Ranger's here," she announced. "He is," Cole said. "Does he want to come watch me do my PT exercises? I'm supposed to practice at home, and I think it goes better when he's watching." "I think he'd find that very interesting." Sophie made a satisfied face and wheeled past toward the back, calling over her shoulder, "Mom, can we have the leftover soup for dinner?" "Yes, Bug." "Can Ranger have some?" "Ranger can have a very small amount of the broth. He's gonna love it." Cole watched her disappear through the doorway. Then he looked at Rachel, who was watching the empty doorway where her daughter had just been. "She's okay," Cole said. Rachel nodded, still looking at the doorway. "I know," she said. "I know she is." It was 3 weeks after the fundraiser closed that Marcus called Cole at 6:40 in the morning. Cole was on his second cup of coffee. Ranger was still asleep. He picked up on the second ring. "What?" Cole said. "I need you to not react to this on the phone," Marcus said, which was not a sentence that made not reacting easy. "Go." Danny Reyes got a call yesterday. Someone reached out through the Veteran Network listing, the one we posted for the fund. Not a donor. Said they were looking for information about the Bennett family, specifically about Sophie. Cole set down his coffee. "Who?" he said. Didn't give a name. Danny pressed. The person said they were family, said they had a right to know where Sophie was receiving services. A pause. "Danny told them nothing and reported it to me immediately." "It could be nothing," Cole said, because he was a methodical person, and methodical people entertain all the possibilities. "It could be," Marcus said, in the tone of a man who did not think it was nothing. "Does Rachel know?" "Not yet. I wanted to tell you first because you know her, and you know how to read how much to say." Cole picked up his coffee and put it back down again without drinking it. "Let me think about how to handle it," he said. "How long do you need?" 20 minutes. "Take 30. There's something else." Cole waited. The fund listing. When Danny set it up, he included general information about Sophie's situation, her age, her mobility needs, the therapy program. Standard stuff for a community fund. He kept it vague, but someone who already knew a few details would have enough to confirm what they were looking for. Meaning whoever called knew something already. Meaning whoever called was looking for confirmation, not information, Marcus said. "There's a difference." There was a short silence. "Yeah," Cole said. "There is." He hung up and sat at the kitchen table for the full 30 minutes he'd been offered, with Ranger now awake and watching him from across the kitchen with the patient attention of a creature that understood something had shifted without knowing what. The question wasn't whether to tell Rachel. Of course he was going to tell Rachel. That wasn't a question. The question was whether whoever had called Danny Reyes was simply a concerned relative who'd heard through the community fund about a family member in need, unlikely, but possible, or whether they were something else. Something Cole's instincts, which he had spent 20 years learning to trust, were currently categorizing in a way he didn't like. A concerned relative who hadn't been in Sophie's life. A relative who knew enough to call the Veteran Network specifically. A relative who had not, apparently, in all the time Sophie and Rachel had been struggling alone, appeared. Cole looked at Ranger. "We're going to the shop," he said. "What?" Rachel was alone when he arrived. The shop didn't open for another 40 minutes, and she was taking delivery of a flower order, signing forms on a clipboard while a guy in a wholesale van unloaded crates of white roses and mixed greenery onto the sidewalk. She saw Cole and Ranger coming, and something in her face immediately changed. Not alarm exactly, but readiness. The readiness of a person who had learned that unexpected early morning visits from serious people tended to have a reason. She finished signing, handed back the clipboard, and waited until the van pulled away. "What happened?" she said. No question mark. Just the words. "Someone reached out through the fund network," Cole said, looking for information about Sophie. They identified themselves as family. Rachel's face went very still. "What did they find out?" "Nothing. The person who received the call reported it immediately and gave them nothing." "Who?" Her voice was controlled, but only just. "I don't know yet. Do you have any idea who it might be?" Rachel looked at the white roses in their crates, sitting on the sidewalk between them. Her hand was on the edge of the doorframe. Cole could see her processing, not panicking, processing, which was something he recognized as discipline under pressure. Sophie's father, she said. Derek. She said his name the way you say the name of a place where something bad happened. Flat, accurate, stripped of anything extra. He's been gone how long? Since Sophie was 3. She paused. He didn't leave. It's not like he packed a bag. He just stopped being present. Phone calls that stopped. Visits that got canceled and rescheduled and eventually just stopped being proposed. And then 2 years ago, I got a letter from an attorney saying he was living in Sacramento and the attorney needed some information about Sophie's current care arrangement. She stopped. I talked to a family lawyer. She said it wasn't actionable. He wasn't requesting anything formal. So I gave them nothing and heard nothing back. Until now, Cole said. Until now, Rachel said. She was quiet for a moment. The October wind moved through the roses on the sidewalk, and a few petals came loose and skittered across the concrete. Sophie doesn't remember him, Rachel said. She knows she has a father. She's asked. I've been honest. I told her he's not in our lives right now. I didn't tell her more than that because she's 9, and I didn't want her carrying something she had no reason to carry yet. Her jaw tightened. If he's suddenly interested in being involved, I don't know that's what this is, Cole said carefully. I know you don't. Rachel looked at him. But why now? Why, after 6 years of nothing, is he suddenly interested in where Sophie is getting therapy? She didn't wait for an answer because she already had one, and Cole suspected it was the same one he had. What changed? Cole chose his next words carefully. Marcus is going to make some inquiries, quietly, just to understand the landscape before you need to make any decisions. He paused. Is there anything else I should know? Anything about Sophie's situation, finances, the trust, anything that might be relevant to why someone who's been absent would suddenly appear? Rachel's expression shifted. Not much. Maybe 2 degrees. But Cole had spent 20 years reading micro-expressions in rooms where reading them wrong got people killed, and the shift was unmistakable. What? He said. Rachel turned and walked into the shop. Cole followed. She went to the back room, to a metal filing cabinet in the corner, and opened the bottom drawer. She rifled through it for a moment, then pulled out a manila folder and set it on the workbench. Inside was a letter, dated 14 months ago, from an attorney in Portland named Kathleen Voss. Cole read it. It was addressed to Rachel and concerned the estate of Margaret Elaine Foster, Rachel's mother, Sophie's grandmother, who had passed away 22 months prior. The letter referenced a trust established in Sophie's name. It was not a large trust by certain standards. By Cedar Hollow standards, it was significant. It was designated specifically for Sophie's education and medical care, structured to disperse incrementally as Sophie aged, with the first major disbursement available at age 12 and a secondary provision for immediate release in cases of documented medical necessity. Cole read it twice. Does Derek know about this? He said. He shouldn't, Rachel said. My mother's estate was handled privately. Derek was never part of our family in any legal sense. They were never close. He certainly wasn't listed as a beneficiary of anything. But, Cole said, but my mother died in Bend, and she was in a community there. People who knew her knew Sophie. People talk. Rachel's voice was steady, but her hands were not quite. I don't know how he'd know, but people talk. Cole set the letter down on the workbench. Outside, through the open back door, he could hear the street waking up. A car, a distant dog, the particular creak of a shop sign in the wind. Normal sounds, morning sounds. Does your attorney still know your situation, the one you spoke to 2 years ago? I haven't updated her. Call her today. Tell her you've had contact, indirect contact, from someone identifying themselves as Derek, and you want to understand your current position. He paused. Don't wait. Do it today. Rachel looked at him. You think this is about the trust, she said. I think it might be, Cole said. I hope I'm wrong. But you don't think you're wrong. A pause. No, Cole said. I don't. Rachel looked at the letter on her workbench for a long moment. Then she picked it up, folded it carefully, and put it back in the manila folder and back in the filing cabinet. She closed the drawer. Okay, she said. I'll call the attorney. Good. Cole. She didn't turn around. If this turns into something legal, it won't get that far, he said. And if it does, we handle it the right way. You keep saying we, she said. Her voice was not accusatory, more like she was noticing a fact. Cole considered that. Yeah, he said. I do. Rachel turned around then and looked at him for a moment with an expression that was hard to read. Not quite trust, not quite its absence. Something in the space between those two things, moving slowly in one direction. She picked up her clipboard from the counter. I need to get the shop open, she said. I know. Cole turned toward the door. Ranger moved with him, the leash slack between them. Cole. He stopped. Thank you, Rachel said, for coming to tell me yourself. You could have sent Marcus. Cole looked back at her. Yeah, he said. I could have. He walked out into the morning. Behind him, he heard the click of the shop door's lock releasing as Rachel turned it to open. Ranger padded beside him on the sidewalk, and Cole kept moving, kept his pace even, kept his face neutral, because there was nothing useful in letting the dread show. But it was there. He'd seen enough tactical situations unspool to understand the geometry of this one. A man who had been absent for 6 years did not suddenly locate a family through a veteran fundraising network because he missed his daughter. People didn't work that way. Absent fathers who found their children through financial networks were following the money, not the child. And if Derek Bennett knew about that trust, even partially, even through rumor, then what had started as a community of decent people trying to help a woman and her daughter had just become a map. Cole reached the corner, stopped, and looked up at the sky. Gray, the way Oregon got in late October. Flat light, a thin smell of rain somewhere to the west. He pulled out his phone and dialed Marcus. One ring. Yeah, Marcus said. I need you to find out everything you can about Derek Bennett, Cole said. Sacramento. Former Army, I'm told. And I need it fast. A pause. How fast? Before he makes his next move. There was a brief silence on the line, the kind Marcus used when he was already converting a request into an action sequence. I'll have something by end of day, Marcus said. Good. Cole put the phone away. He stood on the corner of Clement and Whitmore and looked back toward the flower shop, a block and a half away. He could see the sign in the window. Willow Lane flowers in green cursive. A light was on inside. Ranger sat beside him without prompting, in the military rest position, and waited. All right, Cole said quietly. He turned east and started walking, and the gray Oregon sky pressed down evenly across the whole town. And somewhere in Cedar Hollow, a 9-year-old girl with strong hands and better instincts than most adults was at school, doing her social studies project about logging history, and had no idea that a door she had never opened was swinging very slowly, very deliberately, in her direction. Marcus called back at 4:53 in the afternoon, which was earlier than Cole had expected, which meant whatever Marcus had found was either very easy to locate or very clean on the surface. And clean surfaces on men like Derek Bennett tended to mean the opposite of what they implied. Cole was in his backyard when the call came, splitting wood he didn't strictly need but found useful for the same reason he ran 5 miles every morning. Not because it needed doing, but because his body still required that particular category of output, or it turned against him. He set down the splitting maul and picked up the phone. Talk, Cole said. Derek Allen Bennett, 41 years old. Former Army, enlisted, got out after one tour in 2009, honorable discharge, no disciplinary record. Drove trucks commercially out of Fresno for a while, then Sacramento. Lost his CDL 2 years ago. DUI, third offense. Currently working day labor through a temp agency in Sacramento. Has a girlfriend, renting a 2-bedroom in a neighborhood you wouldn't take your dog to. Marcus paused. No active criminal record beyond the DUI history. No outstanding warrants. On paper, he's just a guy who made some bad calls and is living with the math of that. On paper, Cole said. On paper, Marcus confirmed. Here's the part that isn't on paper. I talked to Danny again. After the call about Sophie, Danny traced the number. It was a prepaid, bought in Sacramento. But Danny has a contact at the Veteran Network Hub in the Bay Area, and that contact remembered a call from 6 weeks ago. Similar inquiry. Someone asking general questions about family trust funds, about how minors' educational trusts are typically structured, about whether a biological parent has any legal standing to access or influence a trust established by a maternal grandparent. Cole was quiet. He was doing research, Cole said. He was doing research 6 weeks before he called Danny, which means this wasn't an impulse. This wasn't a man who suddenly felt guilty and wanted to reconnect with his daughter. He found out about the trust first, Cole said. Then he started planning. That's how it reads, Marcus said. The question is how he found out. My guess is someone in the community around Rachel's mother talked. Grief makes people conversational, and the world is smaller than people think it is. But however he found out enough to start mapping the landscape before he made any move. Cole picked up the splitting maul and set it against the woodpile. The last light was going out of the sky to the west, orange going gray. Okay, Cole said. Has Rachel heard from anyone directly? An attorney, a letter, anything formal? Not that I know of. If he's planning something legal, he'll need a lawyer, and a lawyer's going to want to understand what the trust actually says before they bring any kind of claim. Cole exhaled slowly. Marcus, I need someone to talk to Rachel's attorney before Derek's attorney does. We need to understand what standing, if any, a biological parent actually has over a trust established by a maternal grandparent specifically for medical and educational purposes. I already made that call, Marcus said. A brief pause. What? Cole said. I called Elena Brooks. She's a family attorney in Portland. We used her when we helped the Medford family with the custody complication, remember? She's good. She's methodical. She doesn't panic, and she doesn't overcharge. Marcus's voice was neutral. I didn't give her Rachel's name. I asked a general hypothetical. Biological father, absent 6+ years. Minor child with special needs. Trust established by deceased maternal grandparent, designated for medical and educational use. Does the biological father have any legal pathway to challenge administration of the trust or insert himself into financial decisions regarding the child? What did she say? She said it depends on the specific trust language. But in Oregon, a trust established by a third party for a minor's benefit is generally not subject to parental claims unless the trust document specifically grants that access. The biological parent cannot access the funds directly. However, and this is the part that matters, if the biological parent were to petition for increased involvement in the child's care decisions, and if a court were to grant that petition, the trust administration could potentially be subject to review. A pause. He can't take the money, but if he gets a foothold in Sophie's legal care structure, he could complicate how it gets used. Cole stood very still in his backyard. So the play isn't to take the money, Cole said. The play is to get a seat at the table. And once he's at the table, he makes everything difficult enough that Rachel either buys him out or he negotiates some kind of arrangement. Marcus's voice was flat. Leverage, not access. He doesn't want to be Sophie's father. He wants to be a problem expensive enough to solve. The word Cole thought in that moment was not a word he said out loud. He breathed it out slowly instead, into the cold air of the yard, and watched it mist. Send me Elena Brooks's contact information, Cole said. I'm going to talk to Rachel tonight. Cole, Marcus's voice shifted. Be careful how you handle this. Rachel's going to want to get ahead of it. You need to keep her from moving too fast. I know. She's been alone with this for a long time. Alone people make fast decisions when they see a threat to their kid. Fast decisions in family law situations are almost always bad decisions. I know, Marcus. I know, Cole said. I'll be careful. He hung up and stood in the yard for a moment while Ranger pushed through the back door, which Cole had rigged with a lever handle low enough for the dog to operate, and came to stand beside him. The last of the day's light was almost gone. The Douglas firs beyond the fence were dark shapes against a darker sky. Cole reached down and put a hand on Ranger's head. Come on, he said. Rachel didn't pick up the first time he called. She called back 11 minutes later, and he could hear in the background that she was home. A television, Sophie's voice, the particular acoustic texture of a small house in the evening. Can you talk? Cole said. Give me 2 minutes. The background noise faded. A door. Then quiet. Okay, Rachel said. He told her what Marcus had found. He kept it organized, sequential, factual, the same way he'd briefed mission parameters, because clarity was more useful than comfort in operational moments, and this had become operational whether either of them had intended it to. Rachel didn't interrupt. He could hear her breathing on the line, steady, controlled. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. He was researching this 6 weeks ago, she said. That's what it looks like. 6 weeks ago, Sophie started her uninterrupted therapy. Her voice was very level. The fund was public by then. The listing had her name. Yes. Another silence. So he saw the fund listing, confirmed she was in Cedar Hollow, confirmed the therapy was covered, and started researching the trust. Rachel's voice didn't shake. There was something almost clinical about it, the careful, controlled tone of a woman who had decided not to feel this until she understood it completely. He wasn't looking for Sophie. He was looking for the trust. That's our read, Cole said. Our read, Rachel said. Not unkindly, just noting it. Mine and Marcus's, Cole said. We could be wrong. You're not wrong, she exhaled. I know, Derek. I spent 4 years trying to make something work with a man who was always one step removed from wherever he was supposed to be. He's not cruel. He's just empty in a specific way. The kind of empty that looks for shortcuts. A pause. He found one. I want you to call Elena Brooks, Cole said. Tonight or first thing tomorrow. Marcus worked with her. She's good. I can't afford. She's agreed to an initial consultation at no charge, Cole said. After that, we figure it out. A brief silence. You already arranged that, Rachel said. Marcus did. Cole. Her voice had something in it that wasn't quite frustration. You can't just, I know I can't just. But this is the kind of situation where the person who moves first with the right information has a significant advantage, and I didn't want you to lose that advantage because of the cost of a phone call. The silence that followed was longer this time. Okay, Rachel said finally. Her voice was quieter. Okay. Send me her number. Already done. Check your messages. A small sound on the line. Not quite a laugh. Good night, Cole. Good night, Rachel. He put the phone down and sat in the kitchen for a long time, with Ranger asleep under the table and the house around him very quiet, and thought about the geometry of situations like this. How they built slowly and looked manageable until they weren't. How the moment of maximum danger was never the obvious confrontation, but the quiet moves made before anyone had declared anything. He'd seen it in operational planning. He'd seen it in the way certain kinds of people built leverage. Patience and incremental positioning, and then suddenly the ground had shifted and you were reacting instead of acting. And reacting was always the losing position. He was not going to let Rachel get into the losing position. Elena Brooks called Rachel on a Wednesday morning, and Rachel called Cole 40 minutes after that. She needs the full trust document, Rachel said. The original. My mother's estate attorney in Bend has a copy. I have a copy. She wants to review the language herself. Can you get it to her today? I can scan it and send it. Cole, a pause. She said something. Elena said that the protection of the trust depends significantly on the specific language of the eligibility clause. She said some trusts have standard language and some have very specific language, and the difference matters enormously in a challenge situation. I know, Cole said. Send her the document. I found the clause. Rachel's voice was odd, something between relief and uncertainty, the tone of a person who has found information they don't yet know how to calibrate. My mother was very specific. When the attorney drafted the trust, my mother apparently spent a long time on one particular paragraph. The attorney flagged it as unusual. Cole waited. She included a provision, Rachel said, that anyone seeking to influence or challenge the administration of Sophie's trust must demonstrate a documented history of sustained participation in Sophie's care. Not biological relation, participation, medical appointments, therapy sessions, educational decisions, documented, verifiable participation. Cole was quiet for a moment. Your mother knew, he said. My mother knew Derek. Rachel's voice was carefully neutral. She spent 22 months watching him not show up, and then she sat down with an estate attorney and told her exactly what she wanted the clause to say. A pause. The attorney said she'd never seen language quite like it, said your mother was very specific, almost like she was writing instructions for a specific scenario. Because she was, Cole said. Because she was, Rachel said. The silence between them was different from the usual kind, not uncomfortable but weighted, carrying the particular gravity of a detail that changes the shape of everything around it. Send Elena the document today, Cole said. All of it. I will. Then quieter. My mother never told me she put that in there. I read the trust when the estate was settled and I must have moved too fast. I was grieving and the paperwork was… She stopped. I didn't read it carefully enough. You were dealing with a lot. Yeah. A short pause. Cole, if Derek actually files something, if this goes anywhere formal, that clause doesn't automatically end it, does it? He can still try. He can try, Cole said, and we let him. And when he does, Elena walks into whatever room they put us in with 22 months of documentation of every therapy session, every medical appointment, every school conference Rachel attended, and she puts it on the table. And then she asks Derek's attorney to produce the same documentation for their client. Rachel said nothing for a moment. And there's nothing, she said. There's nothing, Cole said. Another pause. That's not a short process, Rachel said. Even if we're right, even if the clause holds, that's months, maybe longer. And Sophie would… She stopped. I don't want Sophie to know, not yet. She's doing so well right now. Her last PT session, Gail said she'd improved her lateral transfer without assistance. She's proud of herself. I don't want to put something over that. Then we don't tell her yet, Cole said. We keep moving. You call Elena, you send the document, you let the legal process do what legal processes do, and in the meantime, Sophie goes to PT on Tuesdays and Thursdays and does her logging history project and scratches Ranger behind his ears. You make it sound manageable, Rachel said. It is manageable, Cole said. It's just not comfortable. A small exhale. There's a difference. There's always a difference. The formal letter arrived 11 days later. It came to Willow Lane Flowers, addressed to Rachel, from an attorney named Gordon Hale with a firm in Sacramento. It was 3 pages. The language was measured, professionally imprecise in the way of legal correspondence designed to open negotiations rather than close them. Derek Bennett, as Sophie's biological father, wished to be formally apprised of Sophie's current care arrangements and educational situation, and wished to explore whether a structure could be established for appropriate paternal involvement going forward. It did not mention the trust directly. It didn't need to. Rachel called Cole from the back room of the shop, voice flat and controlled. The letter came. Okay. It's worth seeing it in writing, she said. Send it to Elena. Already did. A pause. He used a real attorney, a Sacramento firm. We knew he would. Knowing and seeing it are different things. Yeah, Cole said. They are. He heard her take a breath. Cole, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly. Okay? Is this going to cost me the shop? Her voice was very steady. If this goes to a formal legal process, the fees, the time, I've just gotten back to a point where I can breathe. If I have to… Elena works on a sliding scale in family protection cases, Cole said. And Marcus is already looking at options for legal defense support through the Veteran Family Network. We're not there yet, but if it comes to it, there are resources. You already looked into that? Yes. A silence. Why are you doing this? Rachel said. Not accusatory, genuinely asking. Cole took a moment with that. Because when I walked past your shop the first time, he said, Ranger stopped, and I've learned not to question it when he does. It was a deflection, and they both knew it, but Rachel let it stand. Okay, she said. Okay. Elena Brooks drove down from Portland on a Friday. She was 53, compact, with short silver hair and the kind of composed, unhurried attention that Cole recognized from the best officers he'd served under, the ones who made decisions from information rather than impulse. She met with Rachel at the flower shop after closing, with Cole present at Rachel's specific request this time, and Ranger asleep under the workbench. Elena had read the trust document 3 times. She set it on the workbench and put her finger on one paragraph. This clause, she said, is not standard. Your mother's estate attorney told you it was unusual, and she was right. I've been doing family law for 21 years, and I've seen participation-based protection clauses twice. Both times they were drafted specifically to protect a child from a particular known risk. She looked at Rachel. Your mother wrote this to protect Sophie from exactly what's happening. Rachel looked at the document. Can it be challenged? Rachel said. Everything can be challenged, Elena said. But the standard in Oregon for overriding specific trust language is high, and the standard for overriding a participation clause that explicitly requires documented involvement is very high. Gordon Hale is a competent attorney. He's not a specialist in trust law. He's going to run into this clause and reassess his strategy. What's his most likely next move? Cole said. Elena looked at him. She'd been assessed him quietly since arriving, with the lateral attention of someone accustomed to reading rooms. He'll try to establish that Derek has a legitimate paternal interest that supersedes trust mechanics, she said. He'll frame it as a father trying to reconnect with his daughter. He'll avoid the trust directly and come at it through the softer angle of parental rights and involvement in care decisions. And we counter with the participation record, Cole said. We counter with the participation record, Elena confirmed. Every documented appointment, every signed consent form, every school communication that Rachel handled alone. We document Derek's absence comprehensively, and we put it against the trust clause. She paused. We also document the community support structure, the fundraiser, the veteran network, the therapy program. We demonstrate that Sophie has a robust, functioning support system with real people who are genuinely involved in her life. She said this looking at the workbench, at Ranger under it, and then at Cole briefly, and then back at Rachel. I want to start building the documentation file immediately, Elena said. Rachel, I need everything. School records, therapy notes, medical records, any communication with Derek or his attorney. Every piece of paper that has Sophie's name on it. How long to compile it? Rachel said. 2 weeks if we move quickly. We move quickly, Rachel said without hesitation. Elena nodded. She capped her pen. Then she looked at Rachel with the steady, measured expression of a woman who had sat across from a lot of frightened people in difficult situations and had decided a long time ago that the most useful thing she could offer them was clarity. Rachel, she said, I want you to understand something. This man does not have a strong position. He has a biological connection and an attorney willing to send letters. That's it. He has no documented involvement in Sophie's life, no history of participation, no established relationship. The trust language was designed to neutralize exactly that configuration. She paused. His strategy depends on you being frightened enough to settle before any of this reaches formal proceedings. So the single most important thing you can do is refuse to be frightened into a settlement. Rachel looked at her. I'm not frightened, Rachel said. Good, Elena said. Cole watched Rachel's face when she said it, and he believed her, which was the thing that mattered. Not the absence of fear. He knew she was afraid, had been afraid since the first call to the veteran network, would be afraid until this was resolved. But there was a specific kind of person who was afraid and moved forward anyway, and Rachel Bennett was that kind of person in a way that had apparently been true her entire adult life. Because you did not raise a child like Sophie, alone, in a struggling business, against compounding odds, by being the other kind. Elena left at 8:15 with a copy of the trust document and a list of records to collect. Rachel locked the shop door and stood for a moment in the quiet of the front room, looking at the coolers and the flowers and the work table and the place where the letter had sat on the counter when it arrived. You okay? Cole said. No, Rachel said. But I will be. She looked at him. Is that what you said? About being out of the military? Cole thought about it. Something like that, he said. Okay. She nodded once, to herself. Okay. The response from Gordon Hale's office came faster than Elena had anticipated. 9 days, not the 3 weeks she'd projected. This, Elena told Cole on the phone the morning it arrived, was not reassuring. He's moving quickly, she said, which means one of two things. Either he got better information about the trust than we thought, and he's trying to get ahead of our documentation, or Derek's timeline has changed, Cole said. Something external is pushing him. That's my concern, Elena said. Cole, I need you to make sure Rachel does not communicate directly with Derek or Gordon Hale. Not a text, not an email, nothing. Everything through me. I'll tell her. Today, before she sees the response. Cole called Rachel immediately. She picked up from the back of the shop. Elena called you, Rachel said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, the response came. Don't open it if it arrives at the shop today. Call Elena first. I already have it. A pause. A courier delivered it this morning, Cole. A courier, not mail. A courier. The hair on Cole's forearms registered something his rational mind was 2 seconds behind on. Don't open it, he said. Call Elena right now, while I'm still on the line. It's already open, Rachel said. Her voice had changed. It was the voice of someone looking at something and processing it in real time, and not yet finished processing. Cole, he's not just asking for involvement in care decisions. He's petitioning for formal co-guardianship. The letter says that as Sophie's biological father, he has a right to be involved in major medical, educational, and financial decisions, and that he intends to seek a formal legal arrangement to ensure that right is protected. Cole said nothing. Cole, co-guardianship. That's not a letter from a man who wants to see his daughter. That's a move. I know, Cole said. If he gets co-guardianship, he won't, Cole said, but if he does, Rachel. His voice was steady, not because the situation warranted this, but because one of them needed to be steady right now, and it wasn't going to be Rachel, and it shouldn't be, and that was fine. Listen to me. Call Elena. Right now, from that room. Don't take any other calls today. Don't respond to anything. Just call Elena. Okay. Her breathing was controlled but shallow. Okay. And Rachel. What? This is the move he was building toward. The letters, the courier, the formal petition. It's designed to make it feel bigger than it is. It's designed to make you feel like you're already behind. Cole paused. You're not behind. We have the document, we have the clause, we have 2 years of records, and we have Elena Brooks, who has been doing this for 21 years and has seen this strategy before. You're not behind. A silence. Then very quietly, thank you. Call Elena. She did. What happened next moved fast in the way of legal situations that have been building slowly and then suddenly aren't, a compressed sequence of filings and responses and counterfilings. The procedural architecture of a custody and guardianship dispute being assembled at speed. Cole watched the process from a deliberate distance, which was where he needed to be. His role was not legal. His role was to make sure Rachel had support, that Sophie's routine stayed intact, and that the people who needed information had it. He continued walking Ranger past the shop every morning. He continued stopping in twice a week. Sophie continued showing him her PT exercises, which had progressed to a set of resistance band routines Gail had added to her home program. Watch, Sophie said one afternoon, pulling a green band taut between her hands and executing the movement with careful precision. Gail says my shoulder rotation is like a 7th grader. Is that good? She said it like it was good. Then it's good, Cole said. Sophie relaxed the band and looked at him with the slightly sidelong expression she used when she was assembling a question she wasn't sure about. Mom's stressed, she said. Cole looked at her. She always seems stressed, Sophie continued carefully. But it's different right now, like she's waiting for something. Cole had thought about this, had thought about how much Sophie knew or guessed, and what the right answer was. You know your mom pretty well, he said. I live with her, Sophie said, as though this explained everything, which it did. She's dealing with some paperwork stuff, Cole said. Adult stuff. It's not fun, but it's being handled. Sophie pulled the band taut again and released it. Is it about my dad? She said. Cole looked at her. She was looking at the band, not at him. Why do you ask that? He said. Because that's the only adult stuff Mom never talks to me about, Sophie said. Everything else she tells me, at least a little. School money, the shop, the therapy costs, all of it. She tells me a little so I understand, but not dad stuff. So if there's something she's not telling me, even a little, she glanced at him. Probably dad stuff. 9 years old. Cole thought about what Marcus had said. She's sharp. Understatement. I can't tell you more than your mom has told you, Cole said. That's her call to make. Sophie nodded. She didn't look upset. She looked like a person who had been given an honest answer that confirmed a suspicion she had and was deciding what to do with it. Okay, she said. But Cole. Yeah. She looked at him directly. Brown eyes, completely level. Whatever it is, you're helping her with it, right? Cole held that look for a moment. Yeah, he said. I am. Sophie nodded once, satisfied, in the decisive way of someone who has gathered the only piece of information they actually needed. She went back to her resistance band. Ranger watched from the corner with the expression of a creature who had assessed the room and found it acceptable. The court date was set for a Thursday in November. Cedar Hollow's County Family Court was a small building attached to the municipal complex. Beige carpet and fluorescent lighting, and the particular institutional smell of places where difficult things were decided without drama. Cole drove Rachel there. Marcus came separately and sat in the back of the gallery with his arms folded, because Marcus was the kind of man who occupied space calmly and made rooms feel more stable, and Cole wanted him there for that reason. Elena met them at the door. She looked at Rachel, then at Cole, then back at Rachel. "How are you doing?" Elena said. "Ready," Rachel said. Elena almost smiled. "Good." Gordon Hale was already inside. He was younger than Cole had expected. Late 30s, dark suit, the slightly over-prepared energy of an attorney working a case he thought was going to be easier than it was turning out to be. He sat with Derek Bennett at the respondents' table, and Cole got his first look at Derek. Average height, sandy hair going thin. The look of a man who had spent a lot of time being charming and was currently trying to arrange his face into something that read as sincere fatherly concern and wasn't quite getting there. He wore a new shirt, which Cole could tell because the fold creases from the packaging were still faintly visible across the shoulders. Derek looked across the room. He saw Rachel. Something moved through his expression. Not guilt exactly, more like calculation absorbing a variable. Then he looked at Cole and Ranger, who had been approved as a certified service animal and therefore present, and something different moved through his expression. Discomfort, maybe. Or recalibration. Cole looked at him evenly and said nothing. Derek looked away first. The session began. Gordon Hale was fluent and composed in his opening presentation. He framed Derek as a father who had struggled but who genuinely wished to be involved in his daughter's life, particularly now as Sophie's needs were complex and the decisions surrounding her care had significant long-term implications. He used the words Sophie's best interests 7 times. Cole counted. Elena listened without expression, making small notes. When Hale finished, Elena stood up. She placed a 3-inch binder on the table. "I'd like to begin," Elena said, "with Rachel Bennett's attendance record." She went through it methodically. Every medical appointment in 22 months, every PT session, every signed school document, every insurance claim, every specialist referral, every equipment maintenance record. She put dates and initials and signatures on the record, one after another, steady and unhurried, building a structure from the bottom up, the way good attorneys build structures, so that by the time you reached the top, the conclusion was not an argument, but an inevitability. Then she turned to Derek's record. She didn't editorialize. She simply noted that in the same 22-month period, Derek Bennett had attended 0 documented medical appointments, 0 therapy sessions, and had made 0 documented contact with Sophie's school, her medical providers, or her therapist. Then she put the trust document on the record. She read the participation clause aloud. Once, clearly, without emphasis, because the clause did not need emphasis. Gordon Hale's composure developed a small crack at the corner. It wasn't visible to most of the room. Cole saw it. Then Elena said she had one more item. She placed a second document on the table. A record of communications obtained through discovery. Phone records and email headers from Derek's own accounts, obtained legally through the discovery process. A series of searches and emails from 6 weeks before his attorney's first letter, documenting his research into the trust structure. Searches for trust challenge strategies. An email to Gordon Hale asking specifically about the legal pathways to oversight of a minor's medical trust in Oregon Family Court. The searches had begun 4 days after the Sophie Bennett Mobility Fund was publicly posted online. The room went quiet in a particular way. Elena let it be quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The petitioner's stated motivation is paternal concern for his daughter's well-being. The documentary record suggests the petitioner's actual motivation was financial. I asked the court to consider whether a co-guardianship petition motivated by financial interest in a minor child's trust fund filed by a petitioner with 0 documented history of participation in that child's care. and filed by a petitioner who began planning this action before making any attempt at direct contact with the child or her mother, constitutes a legitimate claim to Sophie Bennett's best interests. She sat down. Cole did not look at Derek. He looked at Rachel, who was looking at the table in front of her with her hands flat on the surface, very still, and whose jaw was set with the kind of controlled composure that costs something. He looked at Marcus in the back row, who met his eyes briefly and gave a single minimal nod. He looked at Ranger, who was sitting at his feet looking at nothing in particular with the patient, impassive attention of a creature that had sat through worse. The judge asked Gordon Hale if he wished to respond. Hale tried. He said that the timeline of research did not necessarily indicate improper motivation. He said that Derek had struggled with addiction and personal difficulty and had not known how to approach contact with Sophie. He said that the intent going forward was genuine involvement. The judge listened. Then the judge asked Gordon Hale a single question. Does your client have any documentation of contact with his daughter in the past 6 years? Any letter, any phone call, any birthday card, any communication of any kind? Hale was quiet for a moment. We're still compiling a... Does he have any? The judge said. A silence. No, Hale said. The room was quiet again. Outside, through a window that looked onto the municipal parking lot, Cole could see a maple tree had lost most of its leaves. The remaining ones moved in the wind, orange and slow, drifting in the direction of nothing in particular. The judge looked at her notes for a long moment. Then she looked up and said that she was not going to rule today. She would review the full evidentiary record and issue a written ruling within 30 days. But she said it in a tone that told everyone in the room, including Gordon Hale, what the ruling was going to say. Derek stood up when the session ended. He looked at Rachel across the room. Cole watched his face. There was a moment where Derek's expression was unguarded for just a second. Not guilt, not regret exactly, but the expression of a man who had done a calculation and come up short and was processing that arithmetic in real time. Then he looked at Cole again. Cole held his gaze. Steady, neutral, not threatening, not aggressive, just present, in the particular way of someone who has assessed a situation completely and made a decision about it and is not going to be moved. Derek looked away. He said something to Hale in a low voice. Hale nodded. They walked out. Rachel did not move for a moment. She sat at the table with her hands still flat on the surface, and then she exhaled, slowly, the way a person exhales when they have been holding something for a very long time. Elena touched her arm briefly. That went the way it needed to go, Elena said quietly. Rachel nodded. She didn't say anything. Cole looked at the door where Derek and his attorney had exited, and at the hallway beyond it, empty now, fluorescent light on beige carpet. He reached down and put his hand on Ranger's head. The dog's tail moved once. The maple leaves outside the window kept falling, orange and slow, carried sideways by a wind that had come from somewhere colder, somewhere further north, moving through Cedar Hollow, like everything else that passed through small towns, briefly and without stopping. The parking lot was half empty by the time they came out. The November air had teeth in it, not brutal, but present, the kind of cold that reminded you it was done negotiating. Rachel walked through the glass door and stopped on the concrete steps and just stood there for a moment, tilting her face up toward the gray sky like she needed to verify it was still there. Cole stood one step below her. Ranger sat between them. Marcus came out behind them and pulled the door shut and said nothing, which was the correct thing to say. Elena came last, coat on, bag over her shoulder, already composing the follow-up in her head by the look of her. What happens now? Rachel said, as she was still looking at the sky. Now we wait for the written ruling, Elena said. 30 days, she said. Could be less. What happened in there today? The research timeline, the emails, the absence of documentation on his side, that goes into the record, and it doesn't come back out. Can he try again, Rachel said, after the ruling? He can appeal. But an appeal on a guardianship denial in Oregon, with the evidentiary record we built, is expensive and it has a very low success probability. Gordon Hale knows that. Elena shifted her bag. I would expect a letter from Hale's office within the next 2 weeks, suggesting a mutual withdrawal and non-contact agreement. Rachel finally looked down from the sky. Non-contact, she said. It protects both parties. Derek agrees not to pursue further legal action. Rachel agrees not to pursue action against Derek for the costs incurred. It's clean. Elena paused. You don't have to accept it, but in my experience, it's usually the right outcome because it ends the exposure on both sides and lets everyone move forward. Rachel looked at the parking lot. Somewhere across the lot, a car started and pulled out. He just walks away, Rachel said. Yes, Elena said. He does. The silence that followed was the kind that didn't need filling. Rachel looked at Cole. You knew it would go this way, she said. I thought it would, Cole said. I didn't know. There's a difference. There's always a difference. She made a sound that was almost a laugh. Then she looked at Marcus. Thank you, she said, for everything you put together. The records, the documentation, She stopped. You didn't know us. Either of you. 3 months ago, you didn't know we existed. Marcus looked at her with the patient expression of a man who'd heard this before, from other people, in other parking lots after other difficult mornings, and had never quite found the right response to it. Ranger knew Sophie in about 12 seconds, Marcus said. The rest of us just caught up. Rachel pressed her lips together, looked at the dog. Ranger, for his part, was watching a pigeon on the far end of the parking lot with measured professional interest. I need to pick Sophie up from school at 3, Rachel said. Go, Elena said. I'll be in touch. Cole walked Rachel to her car. She unlocked it and stood with her hand on the door and looked at him for a moment with the expression she sometimes wore when she was thinking something she wasn't sure she should say. What? Cole said. Nothing. She shook her head slightly. I'll call you tonight. She got in. He watched her drive out of the lot. Marcus appeared at his shoulder. You doing okay? Marcus said. Fine. You look like a man who carried something for 3 months and doesn't know what to do with his hands now. Cole looked at him. I said I'm fine, Marcus. Yeah. Marcus pulled his keys out. I'm heading back to Portland tonight. But Cole, there's something I want to say before I go. Go ahead. Marcus was quiet for a moment. In the particular way he got quiet before saying something he'd thought about carefully. You've been out 3 years, Marcus said. And for 3 years you've been doing this. He gestured vaguely at the building, the parking lot, the general landscape of what they'd been doing for 3 months, with no framework for it, just reacting when something in front of you needed handling. Cole said nothing. I'm not criticizing, Marcus said. What you did here was right, and I'd do it again. I'm saying, he paused, you're good at this. The organizing, the identifying what needs doing, the keeping people calm when the situation wants to panic them. You always were. And I think you've been using those skills in a 3-mile radius when there's a wider application. I'm not looking for a project, Marcus. I know you're not. That's not what I'm saying. Marcus put his keys in his pocket. I'm saying maybe Cedar Hollow is the right place. I'm saying maybe this, whatever the hell this is the thing you've been doing without naming it. Cole looked at the building. It's not that simple, Cole said. No, Marcus said. It never is. He clapped Cole once on the shoulder, solid and brief, and walked to his truck. Cole stood in the parking lot with Ranger until the truck was gone, and then for a few minutes after, looking at the maple tree with its last few orange leaves and thinking about what Marcus had said and not said, and what the difference was between those two things. The written ruling came in 22 days, not 30. Elena called Cole at 7:40 in the morning, which was before she would have called Rachel, because Cole had asked her to. It's a full denial, Elena said, complete. The judge cited the participation clause explicitly. She cited the research timeline as evidence of financial motivation. And she included a finding that the petitioner's claim did not meet the threshold of demonstrating Sophie's best interests, which is the strongest language available in this context. Cole exhaled. Derek has 60 days to appeal, Elena said, but I've already heard from Hale's office this morning. They're not appealing. They want to discuss the non-contact framework. Good. I'll handle that negotiation. Cole, it's over. A brief pause. I want you to hear me say that clearly. This is over. Cole stood in his kitchen. The coffee was going cold. Ranger was at the back door, wanting out. Yeah, Cole said. Thank you, Elena. He hung up and let Ranger out and stood in the open doorway looking at the backyard while the cold November air moved through the house. Then he called Rachel. She picked up on the first ring. Tell me, she said. He told her. The silence on the other end lasted maybe 8 seconds. "Okay," she said. Her voice was strange, not flat, but compressed, like she was holding something in that needed more space than a phone call could give it. "It's over, Rachel." "I know." A breath. "I know it is. I just—" Another breath. "Give me a minute." He gave her the minute. "Okay," she said again. "Okay, I need to open the shop. Can I call you tonight?" "Yeah." "Cole." "Yeah." "I don't know how to—" She stopped, started again. "There are things I need to say, and I don't know how to say them on a phone in my kitchen at 7 in the morning." "Then say them tonight," Cole said. "Okay," she said. "Tonight." She hung up. Cole went back inside and poured the cold coffee down the sink and made a fresh cup and sat at the table. And Ranger came back in through the lever handle door and sat across the kitchen and looked at him. "What?" Cole said. Ranger's tail moved. "Don't," Cole said. He did not hear from Rachel that night. Not because she didn't call. She did, at 8:15, and they talked for an hour and 20 minutes, which was the longest phone call Cole had had with anyone in 3 years. And at the end of it, neither of them said anything particularly significant about the things Rachel had mentioned needing to say. They talked about Sophie's PT progress. They talked about the mobility fund and what Marcus had suggested about formalizing it into a proper nonprofit structure. They talked about the maple tree outside the county family court building and how it had lost most of its leaves. They talked about a book Sophie was reading about Antarctic exploration that she had apparently been narrating to Ranger during her PT practice sessions, under the theory that Ranger found it interesting. Cole found, somewhere around the 40-minute mark, that his shoulders had dropped about an inch. He hadn't noticed they were up. When Rachel said goodnight, she said it quietly, and with a weight that meant more than the word, and Cole said it back the same way, and neither of them elaborated, and that was exactly right. Sophie found out 2 days later. Not from Cole, not from Rachel, from a classmate whose mother had been at the VFW when Marcus presented the fundraiser, and who had heard pieces of it, and transmitted those pieces through the normal degraded relay of school hallway conversation until they arrived at Sophie in a form that was about 40% accurate and 100% alarming. Sophie came home from school and went directly to her mother behind the counter and said, "Is Dad trying to take my trust money?" Rachel looked at her. "Who told you that?" Rachel said. "Kylie Drummond's mom was talking about it." Rachel set down the stem cutters. She came around the counter and crouched down so she was at eye level with Sophie, which she did when she needed Sophie to understand she was getting the full, direct version of something. "Yes," Rachel said. "He tried. It's over now. He's not getting anything and he won't try again." Sophie processed this. "Is that what you've been stressed about?" Sophie said. "Yes." "For how long?" "About 3 months." Sophie looked at her hands on the wheelchair rims, then at her mother. "You should have told me," Sophie said. "You were doing so well." "Mom." Sophie's voice was not angry. It was something more complicated. The voice of a child who has been protected past the point where the protection was useful and is being honest about it. "I knew something was wrong. I was stressed about not knowing. I would have been less stressed knowing." Rachel looked at her daughter for a moment. "Yeah," Rachel said. "You're probably right." "I'm definitely right." "Okay," Rachel said. "You're definitely right." Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then, "Cole helped." "Yes," Rachel said. "Cole helped a lot." "And Marcus. And Marcus." Sophie looked at the door, as if calculating whether Cole was about to walk through it. "I want to say thank you to him," Sophie said. "Properly. Not just regular thank you." "What's properly?" Sophie thought about it. "I don't know yet," she said. "I'll figure it out." She figured it out the following Saturday. Cole came by in the morning as usual, Ranger at his heel. Sophie was waiting at the door of the shop with a flat square package wrapped in brown paper and tied with green florist ribbon, which she held out to him when he came through the door with the directness of someone who had been rehearsing the moment. "This is for you," she said. "And this," she produced a smaller package, "is for Ranger. It's a chew toy shaped like a duck. I don't know if he'll like ducks." Cole took both packages. He looked at Ranger, who was already investigating the smaller one by smell. "What's this?" Cole said, nodding at his. "Open it." He unwrapped it. It was a painting. Watercolor, done on good paper. in the careful, slightly uneven hand of a 9-year-old who had been working at something beyond her current technical level and had gotten further than expected. It showed a street, Clement Street, he could tell from the general shape of it. On an autumn morning, leaves on the ground, and a man and a large dog walking, and a small figure in a wheelchair behind them, catching up. The perspective was from behind all three of them. The light in it was October light, gray gold, the kind that exists for about 20 minutes after sunrise. Sophie had somehow gotten that right, which was not a simple thing to get right. Cole looked at it for a long moment. "Sophie," he said. "I painted it from memory," she said. "I don't actually remember that morning that well because I was really scared, but that's how I think of it now." Cole looked at the painting. He turned it slightly in the light. I was quiet for long enough that Sophie started to look uncertain, so he said, "This is really good work," because it was. And because uncertainty in a 9-year-old who has made something and handed it to you is one of the few things Cole Maddox had no defense against. Sophie's expression resolved immediately. "I know," she said. "Gail says I should try art therapy because my hands are getting strong, but I think I just like painting." "Those aren't mutually exclusive." "That's what I said." Rachel appeared from the back room with a coffee and handed it to Cole without comment, which had become a kind of ritual over the past weeks. Cole arriving, Rachel providing coffee, neither of them making much of it. "She worked on it for 2 weeks," Rachel said. "Mom, you did. There's no shame in that." Sophie made a face that meant she was filing this away to argue about later. Cole held the painting and the coffee and looked around the shop. The coolers, the buckets, the work table, the specific quality of morning light coming through the front window, and felt something settle in him that he hadn't noticed was unsettled. He'd spent 3 years looking for the edges of himself in a new geography and not finding them. The hip replacement, the dreams that woke him at 2 a.m. and were gone by the time he sat up, the routine that held him upright, all of it was management, not resolution. He knew the difference. This was something different. He couldn't name it precisely, which was unusual for him. But naming it precisely didn't feel urgent in the way it usually did. Ranger had opened the duck toy by this point and was carrying it around the shop with a dignity that suggested he found it acceptable. "Ranger likes the duck," Sophie reported. "He's not going to admit it," Cole said. "He already did," Sophie said. "Look at him." "What?" Elena's letter, formalizing the non-contact agreement, arrived at the flower shop on a Tuesday. Rachel signed it at the workbench with a pen that was out of ink on the first 2 tries, found a third pen, signed it, and drove it to the post office herself rather than mailing it from the shop, for reasons she didn't fully articulate but that Cole understood. Some things you need to personally carry to a point of departure. She called him from the post office parking lot. "It's done," she said. "Okay. I don't feel what I thought I'd feel." "What do you feel?" "Tired," she said. And a pause. "Empty in a way that might be relief, but I can't tell yet." "That's usually what relief feels like at the beginning," Cole said, "before it turns into something else." "Does it turn into something else?" "Yeah," Cole said. "Give it time." She was quiet for a moment. He could hear the parking lot around her, a car, wind. "I owe you about 7 conversations that I've been putting off," she said. "You don't owe me anything." "Cole," her voice was direct, "that's not what I mean, and you know it." He did know it. "Whenever you're ready," he said. "Saturday," she said. "Sophie has PT. The shop's closed. I'll make actual food, not just coffee." "Okay. Don't be weird about it." "I won't be weird about it." "You're already being slightly weird." "I'll work on it." She hung up. He stood in his kitchen for a moment and looked at the painting on the kitchen wall. He'd put it next to the window, where the morning light hit it at the right angle. Clement Street in October, 3 figures and a distance between them that was closing. Ranger was looking at the duck on the floor. "Don't," Cole said. Ranger picked up the duck. Marcus came back to Cedar Hollow the following week, not for anything specific, but because Marcus was a man who checked on his work, and his work here was not entirely finished. He brought the legal pad. They sat at Cole's kitchen table and went through the mobility fund structure, what it had accomplished, what it could accomplish with proper nonprofit registration, what the overhead looked like, who needed to be on the board. "Danny Reyes wants to be involved," Marcus said. "From Portland. He thinks the veteran network connection gives it reach beyond Cedar Hollow. He's right, Cole said. Rachel wants to be on the board. Obviously. Gail Prescott, Sophie's therapist. She's interested in an advisory role, equipment sourcing, rehabilitation expertise. That makes it more than just a money thing, Cole said. That makes it a resource network. That's the idea. Marcus tapped the legal pad. Cole, we need a coordinator here in Cedar Hollow. Someone who knows the town, knows the veterans in the area, can manage the local relationships and flag cases where the fund can help. Cole looked at him. No, he said. I haven't asked anything yet. You were about to. Marcus put his pen down. You're right, Marcus said. I was about to. And I'm going to anyway because that's who I am. Cole, you've been doing this job for 3 months without a title or a structure or compensation. I'm asking you to keep doing it with all 3. Marcus, not full-time. Not a salary, not yet anyway. Part-time coordinator. 20 hours a week maybe. We'll get grant funding through the nonprofit structure. That's standard. You'd have a function that uses what you're good at in a context that doesn't... He paused, choosing the words carefully. In a context that doesn't cost you what the other context cost you. The kitchen was quiet. Ranger was under the table, asleep. Cole looked at the window. The yard outside, the cracked driveway, the rusted basketball hoop. I'm not a social services person, Cole said. No, Marcus said. You're a former SEAL with 20 years of operational experience, a logistics mind, and a dog that diagnoses people better than most credentialed practitioners. Stop trying to find a category you fit into and just do the work. It's not that simple. I know it's not. Marcus picked his pen back up. But the simple version and the true version are close enough in this case that you can start with one and get to the other. Cole said nothing. Sophie Bennett pushed a 30-pound wheelchair 3/4 of a block on a cracked sidewalk, Marcus said. She didn't assess whether she was qualified, she just moved. Cole looked at him. That's manipulative, Cole said. Yeah, Marcus said, but it's also true. The silence stretched for a moment. Let me think about it, Cole said. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. I know what it is, Marcus said. He made a note on the legal pad. I'll give you 2 weeks. I need more than 2 weeks. You'll have an answer in 2 weeks, Marcus said, with the calm certainty of a man who had run enough mission planning to know when a decision had already been made and the person making it just hadn't caught up to it yet. He wasn't wrong, which was annoying. Saturday came with thin November sun, the kind Oregon rationed carefully as the season turned, bright and cold and angled low, casting long shadows across everything. Cole walked to the flower shop because it was only 6 blocks and the hip was cooperating, and he didn't want to arrive in a car when walking felt more honest. Rachel had closed the shop front and set up the workbench in the back as a table, cleared of foam and wire and tools, with a cloth over it that might have been a tablecloth or might have been a length of linen she used for wrapping. Cole couldn't tell. There was soup on a camp stove, bread from the bakery on Clement, a candle, which Rachel looked at when Cole arrived with an expression that suggested she was rethinking the candle. The candle's fine, Cole said. I thought it might be too much. It's not too much. She kept looking at it. Rachel, he said. What? The candle is fine. She let it stay. They ate. Not with the careful sociality of people trying to make a dinner work, but with the more relaxed rhythm of people who had been in enough difficult situations together that the simple ones felt easy by comparison. The soup was good. Actually good, not just functional. Cole said so. Rachel said she'd had a lot of practice making things stretch, and soup was the most forgiving thing to stretch. Sophie calls it emergency soup, Rachel said, because I make it when I don't have time or energy for anything else. But it's the thing she asks for most. Smart kid, Cole said. She's terrifying, Rachel said, in the best way. Cole smiled. He didn't smile often. It wasn't something he'd practiced, and he could feel it happen on his face slightly before he intended it. Rachel noticed. She looked at her soup, outside, through the back door that Cole had left cracked for Ranger's use. The last of the afternoon light was going orange across the alley. Tell me something I don't know about you, Rachel said. Cole looked at her. That's a broad prompt, he said. I know. She pushed her bread through the soup. You know almost everything about me. 3 months of crisis will do that. I don't know very much about you except what I've pieced together. What have you pieced together? Former SEAL, Team 6, I think? Marcus slipped once. Hip replacement. You moved here 14 months ago, which means something happened about 18 months ago that made you choose a town of 6,000 people in Oregon. You run every morning. You split wood you don't need. You don't watch television. A pause. You talk to Ranger more than you talk to most people. Cole looked at the dog, who was lying near the back door with the duck toy between his paws. Team 6 is classified, Cole said. I know, Rachel said. You didn't confirm it. I didn't deny it either. No, she said. You didn't. Cole was quiet for a moment. The thing that happened 18 months ago, he said. There was an operation. It went wrong in a specific way. Nobody died. That's the part I have to remind myself of, because it's true and it matters. But 2 people got hurt who shouldn't have gotten hurt because of a decision I made in about 4 seconds that I've been reconsidering for 18 months. Rachel listened. She didn't move. The review board cleared me, Cole said. All the right boxes. Circumstances beyond control, insufficient intelligence, within acceptable parameters. He paused. The review board was correct and also completely beside the point. Because you don't care about the parameters, Rachel said. I care about the 2 people. Are they okay? One of them is. One of them has a different answer to okay than he did before. Cole set his spoon down. I chose Cedar Hollow because it was somewhere nobody knew what those 4 seconds looked like. And because I needed about 18 months of mornings where the biggest decision was what direction to walk. Rachel looked at him for a moment. And then Ranger stopped, she said. And then Ranger stopped, Cole said. The candle between them moved in a draft from the cracked door. The orange light outside was going gray. Cole, Rachel said, the thing you did here, the organizing, the fundraiser, the legal process, all of it, that's not something most people know how to do. Not instinctively, not at the level you did it. Marcus was supporting structure, Rachel said firmly. You were the thing the structure held up. Don't do that. He looked at her. Don't minimize it, she said. You came back. That first day you could have left and sent a donation, and that would have been generous and completely sufficient, but you came back. And then you kept coming back. She paused. I need you to understand that. Cole looked at the cloth-covered workbench, the candle, the bread, the soup. I understand it, he said. Do you? Because I think you've spent 3 years deciding that the 4 seconds are the full story, and they're not. They're a part. She held his gaze. You're more than 4 seconds, Cole. He sat with that for a moment. It was the kind of thing that could have sounded like comfort and didn't, coming from her. It sounded like information, delivered by someone who had watched him operate for 3 months and was reporting her findings. Marcus offered me a position, Cole said, coordinating the mobility fund locally. I know, Rachel said. He told me he was going to. You knew. I told him to. Cole looked at her. You told him. You need a structure that uses what you're good at, Rachel said. I've been watching you for 3 months. You're good at assessing situations and moving on them without freezing. You're good at keeping people functional when they want to panic. You're good at... She stopped. You're good at noticing when something needs handling and then just handling it, without needing to be asked. That's a job description, Cole said. It's also a description of you, Rachel said. So, Cole looked at this painting in his mind. Clement Street, 3 figures, October light. He looked at Ranger with the duck. He thought about Marcus's legal pad and the 20 hours a week and the grant funding and the 2-week deadline that was already more than half gone. He thought about the moment in the hearing room when Elena put the 3-inch binder on the table and started reading dates, and the way the room had shifted, and the particular quality of Rachel's hands flat on the surface of the table, present, grounded, not surrendering. He thought about Sophie saying whatever it is, you're helping her with it, right? And the complete absence of doubt in her voice when she asked it, like the question already contained its answer. Okay, Cole said. Rachel looked at him. Okay, I'll do it, he said. Just like that? It's not just like that. I've been thinking about it for 10 days. You made Marcus wait 10 days to say okay? He said he'd give me 2 weeks. He gave you 2 weeks because he knew you'd need 8 days and he wanted to build in margin, Rachel said. That man thinks in contingencies. He does, Cole said. It's annoying. It's effective, Rachel said. Those aren't mutually exclusive. She looked at him and something moved across her face, a kind of recognition, not of the phrase but of the structure of the sentence, the way he'd said it. The echo of Sophie saying the same thing about her painting, and Gail and art therapy, and Cole realized he'd absorbed the cadence of a 9-year-old without noticing. Rachel's expression did the thing adjacent to a smile. "No," she said. "They're not." She poured more soup. Outside, the last light was fully gone now, and the alley was dark, and Ranger had carried the duck to Cole's feet and set it down there and gone back to the door, his evening patrol cycle apparently requiring a pass through the alley. Cole heard the click of the lever handle and the soft sound of the dog's paws on the pavement outside. He would come back. He always came back. The candle burned between them, steady, and the soup was warm, and the workbench beneath the cloth was still a workbench, still the surface where Rachel had built things for years in the back of a small, struggling shop, and it was enough. More than enough. Cole picked up his spoon. Rachel picked up hers. They sat like that for a while in the quiet of the shop, the November dark pressing gently against the windows, and said the things they needed to say in the way that people who have been through something difficult together say them. Not all at once, not perfectly, not without pausing to find the right word, but honestly and without hurry, and with the specific ease of two people who have already seen each other at their most functional under the worst conditions and have decided they like what they saw. Ranger came back through the lever door at 9:17, carrying the duck, tracking a small amount of alley dirt across the backroom floor that neither Cole nor Rachel commented on. The candle had burned down about a third. The soup pot was empty. The bread was gone. Rachel had her elbows on the cloth-covered workbench and was telling him about the first winter she'd run the shop alone. Sophie was 4, the furnace had gone out in January, and Rachel had spent 3 days running a space heater in the back room during business hours, and piling every blanket they owned on Sophie's bed at night before she could afford the repair. She told it the way people tell stories about hard times when the hard times are sufficiently past. Not without weight, but without the weight being the point of the telling. Cole listened the way he listened to things that mattered, which was completely. "Why flowers?" he said when she finished. Rachel looked at the coolers along the wall. "My mother grew them," she said. "Not commercially, just the yard. She had a 1/4-acre yard in Bend, and she planted the whole thing. Dahlias, snapdragons, sweet peas along the fence. The smell in August was—" She stopped, smiled slightly. "It was a lot. But when Sophie was born, and I was trying to figure out what I knew how to do, the answer kept being this. The smell of cut stems, the way the colors work together. It's one of the few things that makes complete sense to me when very little else does." "Does it still?" Cole said. "Make sense?" Rachel considered that seriously. "Most days," she said. "Not the business part. The business part is still math I'm barely keeping up with. But the actual flowers—" She glanced at the coolers. "Yeah, still." Cole nodded. It was the kind of conversation that doesn't announce itself as significant. It just sits in the room and becomes part of the structure, the way certain load-bearing elements are invisible until you understand the building. He left at 10:30. Rachel walked him to the front door of the shop, and they stood for a moment on the sidewalk in the cold. Cedar Hollow quiet at that hour, a streetlight on the corner, the smell of incoming rain to the west. "Saturday worked," Rachel said. "Yeah," Cole said. "It did." She looked at him for a moment with the expression she sometimes had when she'd arrived at a position after a period of careful navigation and was confirming she was where she thought she was. Then she reached out and put her hand briefly on his forearm. Just a few seconds, just that, and said goodnight, and went back inside. Cole walked home with Ranger at his heel, and the duck in the dog's mouth, and the November dark around them, and the street lamps made orange pools on the wet pavement, and he thought about load-bearing elements and invisible structures and the distance between 4 seconds and 18 months, and the fact that both of those things were part of the same story without either one being the whole story. He slept without interruption for the first time in a while. He didn't examine that too closely. December came to Cedar Hollow the way. December came to all of Western Oregon, gradually, then suddenly. Rain first, then cold that had actual intention behind it, then a single snow that lasted 2 days and left everything muffled and strange before the rain returned and washed it off. The Mobility Fund's nonprofit application was filed the first week of December. Marcus handled the paperwork with his usual methodical efficiency. Danny Reyes signed on as Portland Regional Coordinator, and Gail Prescott joined the advisory board with the condition that she be allowed to create a vetted equipment supplier network so that wheelchair repairs went to people who actually knew what they were doing. Cole's name appeared on the founding documents as Local Program Coordinator, Cedar Hollow, which was a title that still felt slightly foreign in his mouth, but fit correctly when he was actually doing the work, the way certain gear fits correctly once you've worn it in. His first independent case came through the Veteran Network in the second week of December. A family in Roseburg, 2 hours south. A former Marine, bilateral below-knee amputee, working construction management from a home office, with a 12-year-old son who had cerebral palsy and a power chair that had been in for repairs for 6 weeks because the family couldn't cover the service bill. Cole drove down on a Thursday with Marcus on the phone and Elena's contact information in his pocket and Ranger in the back seat. He was back in Cedar Hollow by evening. The chair was repaired by the following Monday through the fund's new equipment network. He didn't tell Rachel about it. She found out from Marcus, which was fine. "You drove 4 hours round trip," she said. 2 hours down, 2 hours back, Cole said. "That's how round trips work." Cole. "It needed doing. I know it needed doing. I'm saying—" She stopped. "You didn't tell me." He looked at her. "Would you have told me?" he said. She thought about it. "Probably not," she said. "Okay, then." She looked like she wanted to argue with that logic and couldn't find the seam. Sophie's last physical therapy session before the winter holiday break was on a Thursday in mid-December. Gail sent Rachel a summary that evening, 2 pages this time, longer than usual. Cole was at the kitchen table when Rachel texted him a screenshot of the first page without comment. He read it. Gail's clinical language was careful and precise, but the meaning underneath it was not subtle. Sophie's lateral transfer performance, the ability to move herself between the wheelchair and other surfaces, had reached a level Gail had not expected for another 4 to 6 months. Her core stability metrics were in the high normal range for her age group with no mobility considerations applied, meaning she was being measured against kids who walked. Her upper body strength was, as Sophie had noted, comparable to a 7th grader. But the part Cole read twice was at the bottom. Gail had written, "At Sophie's current rate of progress, I would recommend evaluation for a power assist attachment in late spring. More significantly, I believe Sophie should be assessed by Dr. Ewan's pediatric neuromuscular team in Portland. Based on recent literature and Sophie's specific presentation, she may be a candidate for a targeted intervention program that could meaningfully improve her functional mobility beyond current expectations. I don't want to overpromise. Every case is individual, but I would be remiss not to flag this." Cole put the phone down. He picked it up and texted back, "Call me when Sophie's asleep." Rachel called at 9:40. "Did you read all of it?" she said. "Yes." "The Portland part?" "Yes." A pause. "What does meaningfully improve functional mobility mean?" Rachel said, "in actual terms." "I don't know specifically," Cole said. "That's why you call Dr. Ewan's office and find out." "Cole, I've been careful not to build expectations around Sophie's mobility. She's learned to live in her body the way it is, and she's proud of that, and I don't want to—" "Rachel." His voice was quiet. "You're not building expectations. You're getting information. There's a difference." A silence. "I know," she said. "Get the information first," Cole said. "Then you and Sophie decide together what to do with it." "Sophie should be part of it?" "Sophie pushes a 30-pound wheelchair on cracked sidewalks and paints October light from memory," Cole said. "Yeah, she should be part of it." The silence this time was different. Not the processing kind, but the kind that follows a statement that has landed accurately. "Okay," Rachel said. "Okay, I'll call Gail tomorrow and get the referral." "Good." "Cole." Her voice shifted slightly. "What if—" "Don't," he said. "I'm just—" "Get the information first," he said again. "One step." A breath. "One step," she said. "Yeah." The referral went to Dr. Marcus Ewan's pediatric neuromuscular team in Portland the week before Christmas. The appointment was scheduled for February. Christmas itself was quiet in Cedar Hollow. The town put lights on the main street, and the bakery on Clement made things that smelled extraordinary and sold out by noon every day for 2 weeks. Cole bought a tree, a small one, 5 feet, from a lot on the edge of town, because he hadn't owned a Christmas tree in 11 years and found, when he stood in front of the lot, that he wanted one. He put it in the front room with lights and nothing else because he didn't have ornaments, and the lights alone looked fine. Sophie deemed it insufficient when she saw it. "It needs things on it," she said. "It has lights." "Lights are the minimum," Sophie said. "Lights are just the baseline." "I find the lights satisfying." Sophie looked at him with the expression she used when she thought an adult was being deliberately obtuse but was too polite to say so directly. 2 days later, she arrived with Rachel and a bag of ornaments. Not matching, not a set, just an accumulation. A ceramic star with a chip in one point, 3 glass balls in different shades of red, a small wooden bird that had lost half its paint, several others in similar states of history. "These were my mom's," Rachel said quietly when Sophie was arranging them. "She gave them to me when I moved out. They're old." "I can see that," Cole said. He was watching Sophie hang the chipped ceramic star at the very top, leaning forward from her chair, reaching up with both arms, which 3 months ago she could not have done with that extension. "They're right." Rachel looked at the tree. "Yeah," she said, "they are." Sophie leaned back and looked at her work and made a sound of satisfaction. Ranger examined the tree from a safe distance and decided it was not his problem. They stayed for 2 hours. Rachel brought food, actual food, not just coffee, which had become a pattern without either of them having declared it. They ate at Cole's kitchen table, which was the first time anyone other than Marcus had eaten at Cole's kitchen table in 14 months. And it did not feel like a large event, which was precisely what made it one. Sophie asked Cole about his worst Christmas, which was a question that would have seemed intrusive from anyone else, and from her just seemed like information gathering. 2011, Cole said. FOB in Helmand. We had a generator failure, and it was 40 degrees, and we ate cold MREs and played cards for 8 hours. Sophie considered this. What did you play? Spades, mostly. Did you win? No, Marcus took everything. He seems like someone who wins at cards, Sophie said, with the matter-of-fact accuracy of someone who had known Marcus for approximately 4 hours total. He always wins at cards, Cole said. It's extremely annoying. But you're still friends with him. Yeah. So it's not that annoying, Sophie said. Cole thought about that. No, he said. It's not. The new year came and went. January moved through Cedar Hollow the way January moved through small Oregon towns, slowly, wetly, with the specific low-grade persistence of a season that hasn't made any promises about ending. Cole ran every morning. He split wood he didn't need. He coordinated 2 more cases through the Mobility Fund, one in Grants Pass, one in Eugene, and drove to both of them himself because the fund didn't yet have a volunteer driver network in those corridors. And he had a truck and the time. He was building something, in the incremental way of a man who doesn't announce what he's building until he can see enough of it to be sure. Marcus called on a Tuesday in late January. How's the hip? Marcus said, which was his version of how are you, addressed specifically to the variable most likely to affect Cole's operational capacity. Fine, Cole said. Cold mornings. You should have taken the desk job they offered. You've said that. I keep saying it because it keeps being relevant. I'm fine, Marcus. You're running 5 miles a day in Oregon January on a hip replacement, Marcus said. Your definition of fine is aggressive. How's the Portland coordination going? Cole said. Smooth. Danny's excellent. We have 14 families in the queue for equipment assistance, and I think we can clear 8 of them by March if the grant funding process is on schedule. A pause. Cole, I got a call from the VFW in Medford. They want to know if we can do a presentation about the fund model. They're thinking about starting a parallel structure for veteran housing assistance. When? March. I told them you'd present. You told them before asking me. I knew you'd say yes. Cole exhaled. Send me the date, he said. Marcus made a satisfied sound. How's Rachel? Marcus said, with the specific casualness of a man who has been waiting to ask. Fine, Cole said. That's all you've got? That's all I've got. Maddox, I've known you for 16 years. Then you know I don't discuss things until there's something to discuss. A pause. Fair enough, Marcus said. Tell Ranger I said hello. He doesn't know what that means. He absolutely knows what that means, and you know it. Cole looked at Ranger, who was looking back at him from across the kitchen with the patient, slightly judgmental attention of a creature who had assessed the situation fully and found it adequate. I'll tell him, Cole said. The appointment with Dr. Ewan's team was on a Wednesday in the second week of February. Cole drove. Rachel had asked him to, which he understood was its own kind of statement, and he'd said yes without making anything of it. They drove Sophie to Portland, 2.5 hours, morning light changing as they came out of the Coast Range and into the Willamette Valley, the sky opening up wide and flat in the way Cole had never quite gotten used to after years of mountains and narrow horizons. Sophie sat in the back with Ranger, who had been granted travel companion status on grounds that Sophie's documented response to him met the threshold for emotional support presence. Sophie talked for most of the first hour about her Antarctic exploration book, which she had finished and was now annotating in the margins in pencil, a practice she had apparently developed on her own and defended vigorously when Rachel had suggested it might damage the book. It's my book, Sophie had said. The margin notes are the record of who read it. Cole had found no argument against that. Dr. Ewan's clinic was in the medical district near OHSU, a building that smelled like every medical building and had art on the walls that was clearly selected to be calming and landed about 60% of the way there. The team was 3 people, Dr. Ewan, a physical therapist named Brian, and a pediatric specialist named Dr. Cho, who did the initial mobility assessment. Sophie submitted to the assessment with the cooperative seriousness she brought to most things that were important to her. She answered questions clearly. She did what was asked without complaint. She also corrected Dr. Cho once precisely when he described her current equipment as a standard manual chair, noting that it was actually a titanium frame lightweight model with modified push rims, which she had researched before the fund covered the overhaul. Dr. Cho had looked at her over his notes with an expression that was very close to delighted. Cole and Rachel sat in the waiting area for an hour and 40 minutes. Rachel had brought a book and didn't open it. Cole had brought nothing and was fine. You're calm, Rachel said, around the 40-minute mark. One of us should be, Cole said. I'm calm, Rachel said. Okay. I am. Cole said nothing. I'm mostly calm, Rachel said. That's accurate, Cole said. She looked at him with an expression that was exasperation and something warmer underneath it. You're terrible at comfort, she said. I'm not trying to comfort you, Cole said. You don't need comfort. You need someone to sit here with you. She looked at him for a moment. Yeah, she said quietly. I do. They sat. Dr. Ewan came out at the 2-hour mark with Sophie beside him, and Cole read the room in the first second. Sophie was not performing composure, which meant there was nothing she needed to perform composure about, which meant the news was not bad news. It was not bad news. Dr. Ewan sat with them in a side consultation room and explained it carefully, without overpromising, which Cole appreciated. Sophie's specific presentation, the nature of her mobility limitations, the pattern of her progress, her age, put her within the eligibility parameters for a targeted neuromuscular intervention protocol the team had been running for 2 years. It was not a cure. Dr. Ewan was precise about that. It was an intervention designed to maximize functional capacity within her existing neurological profile. In some cases, the results were modest. In Sophie's case, based on the assessment, the projected outcomes were, Dr. Ewan said, in the upper range of what he would consider meaningful. What does upper range look like? Rachel said. Dr. Ewan looked at Sophie. Do you want to tell your mom what we talked about? He said. Sophie looked at Rachel. He said I might be able to walk short distances, Sophie said. With a walker, maybe. Not everywhere, not all the time, but some. Rachel's face did something Cole didn't look directly at, because it was the kind of expression that belongs to its moment and not to observation. Sophie was watching her mother with the careful, assessing attention she always brought to Rachel's emotional states. I don't want you to get too... Sophie started. Sophie. Rachel's voice was controlled by about 70%. Just give me a second. Sophie gave her the second. Rachel pressed her fingers against her mouth briefly, breathed, lowered her hand. Okay, Rachel said. Okay. Tell me the timeline. Dr. Ewan told them the timeline, 6 months of structured sessions, alternating between Portland and a partnered clinic in Grants Pass that was closer to Cedar Hollow. Transportation would be the challenge. The frequency was higher than Sophie's current PT schedule. The transportation is manageable, Cole said. Rachel looked at him. The fund covers transportation for enrolled cases, Cole said. Sophie's already enrolled, and if the session frequency increases, we expand the coverage. Marcus has 3 volunteer drivers in the Grants Pass corridor. Dr. Ewan looked at Cole. Are you... he started. He runs the mobility fund, Sophie said, with the tone of someone providing a necessary briefing. It covers equipment and therapy transportation for families in Southern Oregon. They have a veteran network and a nonprofit structure, and a lady in Portland named Danny who does coordination. Danny's a man, Cole said. Danny sounds like it could be a woman, Sophie said. His full name is Daniel. Okay, well, from now on I'm calling him Danny and assuming he's very nice. He is very nice, Cole said. That part's accurate. Dr. Ewan had been watching this exchange with an expression that suggested he didn't usually have this particular dynamic in his consultation room and found it unexpectedly useful. The transportation coverage, Dr. Ewan said to Cole, that's available immediately. If you give me the session schedule, I'll have coverage arranged within a week, Cole said. Dr. Ewan nodded slowly. I've been trying to get some of my patients from rural areas into this protocol for 2 years. The transportation gap is the single biggest barrier. I know, Cole said. We're working on it. Dr. Ewan looked at him for a moment with the direct, assessing look of a doctor who had just located an unexpected resource. I'd like to talk to you more about that, Dr. Ewan said. Outside this appointment, about other families. That's what we're for, Cole said. They drove home in the late afternoon light, the valley wide and gold to the east, the coast range dark to the west. Sophie fell asleep in the back seat 40 minutes out of Portland with Ranger's chin on her knee and the annotated Antarctic book open in her lap. Rachel drove. Cole had offered. She'd said she needed something to do with her hands. He understood that. They were quiet for most of the first hour. Not the uncomfortable kind of quiet, just the kind that follows a day that was large enough that language felt insufficient. Around Roseburg, Rachel said, "She might walk." Might, Cole said. That's the word Dr. Ewan used. I know that's the word he used, a pause. She might walk. Yeah. Rachel's hands adjusted on the wheel. She's going to work harder than anyone tells her to, Rachel said. You know that. I know, Cole said. And she's going to narrate the whole thing to Ranger. He'll find it very interesting. Rachel made the sound that was almost a laugh. In the back seat, Sophie shifted, and the Antarctic book slid off her knee, and Ranger looked at it, decided it was not his responsibility, and put his chin back. Cole, Rachel said, yeah. I need to say the things I said I'd say, the ones I've been putting off. Cole looked at the road ahead. Okay, he said. I've been putting them off because they're true, and true things are harder to say than things you're still figuring out. She kept her eyes on the highway. You came back. Every time. You didn't make it complicated, and you didn't make it about you, and you didn't ask for anything. You just... She stopped. Tried again. You showed up, and you stayed, and you made the thing manageable when it wanted to be unmanageable. And I don't know how to put that in a sentence that feels like it holds the weight of it. Cole said nothing. I'm not finished, she said. I know. The 4 seconds you talked about, Rachel said. The ones you've been reconsidering for 18 months. She paused. I think you came to Cedar Hollow to be somewhere quiet enough to do that reconsidering. And I think you did it. I think you came out the other side. And I think the other side looks like a man who drives 4 hours round trip to make sure a kid in Roseburg has a functioning wheelchair. And I think that's not a small thing, and I need you to hear me say it isn't. The road ran south and the light ran gold across the valley, and the dark came up from the east, the way it always did, patient and absolute. I hear you, Cole said. Good. Her voice was quieter. Because I'm not going to say it more than once. You won't need to. They drove. At some point, without discussion, Rachel reached across the center console and put her hand over his, briefly, and then returned both hands to the wheel. It was the length of a breath, maybe 2, and it was enough. Spring came to Cedar Hollow in the way spring comes to Western Oregon, unreliably, then all at once, then with full commitment once it finally decided. The maples along Clement Street leafed out in the third week of March. The flower shop's sidewalk buckets went from bare stems to daffodils to tulips in the space of 2 weeks. The river, which nobody kayaked, ran high and fast with snowmelt from the mountains, and the sound of it reached the east side of town on mornings when the wind was right. Sophie's first session with Dr. Ewan's protocol team was on a Tuesday in late March at the partnered clinic in Grants Pass. Cole drove. Rachel sat in the back with Sophie, who spent the 40-minute drive revising what she wanted to say to the therapist, testing different versions on Cole through the rearview mirror. Should I tell her about my shoulder rotation, or is that showing off? Tell her. It's relevant information. What if she thinks I'm overestimating? Then she'll test it and see you're not. What if I am overestimating? Then you'll know what the actual number is, which is more useful than the one you guessed. Sophie considered that. That's how Gail thinks about it too, she said. Gail's right about most things, Cole said. She's right about all things, Sophie said. So far. So far is as far as any of us get, Cole said. Sophie looked at him in the rearview mirror for a moment, with the sideways expression of a child absorbing something she intends to think about later. That's good, she said. I'm going to use that. Go ahead. The session was 90 minutes. Cole and Rachel sat in the clinic waiting room again, and this time Rachel brought a book and opened it, which Cole regarded as progress. He brought nothing and was fine. The Mobility Fund presented at the Medford VFW in March. Cole did the presentation. Marcus sat in the second row and drank bad coffee and said nothing, which was his version of moral support. The room had 40 people in it, veterans, family members, 2 city council members who'd heard about the fund through the Veteran Network, a reporter from the local paper who'd been tipped by Danny Reyes and was writing a piece about veteran community infrastructure in Southern Oregon. Cole was not a natural public speaker. He knew this. He was clear and organized, and he didn't waste words, which turned out to be sufficient for an audience that had limited patience for anything else. He talked about the fund structure, about the documentation process, about the transportation network, about the case in Roseburg and the 2 in Eugene and the ongoing coordination with Dr. Ewan's team in Portland. He talked about Sophie without using her name as the case that had started it, a 9-year-old who had pushed a wheelchair 3/4 of a block on a cracked sidewalk to ask for help for her mother. He said, "She didn't assess whether she was qualified. She identified a problem and she moved. We try to operate the same way." The reporter wrote that line down. It ended up in the paper the following Thursday. Marcus texted Cole a screenshot of the article with no comment. Cole looked at it for a moment, then put his phone in his pocket and went back to splitting wood. It was a Saturday in late April when Sophie first asked to go outside to the sidewalk on Clement Street. Not for PT, not for a session, just outside. The power assist attachment had arrived the week before. Dr. Ewan's team had recommended it, and the fund had covered it through the equipment network. It was not the chair. It was an add-on, a clip-on drive unit that took the load off her push rims on inclines and longer distances. It was lighter than Sophie had expected, and she'd spent 2 days calibrating to it with Gail before Gail had cleared her for unsupervised use on smooth surfaces. Clement Street was mostly smooth. It was a clear April morning, the kind that came after weeks of rain and felt almost extravagant. Pale blue sky, light with actual warmth in it, the maples fully leafed, the flower shop's sidewalk buckets overflowing with spring color that Rachel had arranged with the kind of unconscious precision that came from years of practice. Cole walked beside Sophie. Ranger moved between them, slightly ahead, gray muzzle and slower gait than he'd had 2 years ago, but still attentive in the way that mattered. They went down Clement Street from the shop. The same street, the same direction, the sidewalk Sophie had once struggled across in the opposite direction with everything she had. The power assist made a low, smooth hum. Sophie moved without strain. She didn't announce this. She didn't make a speech about it. She just moved down the street in the April morning with her shoulders back and her hands light on the rims, and a look on her face that was not triumph or relief, but something more settled than either. The look of a person who has worked for something real and is now experiencing it, and knows the difference between that and anything less. Cole walked beside her and said nothing. Ranger padded between them. At the corner of Clement and Whitmore, Sophie stopped. She looked down the length of the street. Then she looked at Cole. "Is this where you were standing?" she said. "When Ranger stopped?" Cole looked at the corner. He was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," he said. "About here." Sophie looked back down the street toward the flower shop. From this distance it was small. The sign in the window, the buckets out front, the specific green of the Willow Lane lettering. "I didn't think you'd wait," Sophie said. "When I was trying to get to you, I thought you'd keep walking. Ranger didn't give me a choice." "You could have kept walking even if he stopped," Sophie said. "You could have just pulled the leash." Cole looked at the dog, who was sitting at the corner looking at nothing in particular with his gray muzzle tilted slightly toward the morning. "Yeah," Cole said. "I could have." Sophie looked at him. "Why didn't you?" Cole thought about that honestly, not the version he might tell someone else, but the actual version, the one that lived in the 4-second gap between hearing the wheels and turning around. "Because he knew something I didn't yet," Cole said, "and I'd learned to trust that." Sophie looked at Ranger. Ranger's tail moved once, slow and easy. "I think about that morning a lot," Sophie said. "What would have happened if you'd already passed before we got there? Or if I'd been too slow? Or if Ranger hadn't stopped?" "A lot of things would have been different," Cole said. "Yeah." Sophie was quiet for a moment. "But they weren't different. They were what they were." "Yeah," Cole said. Sophie turned the chair and started back toward the shop, the power assist humming steadily, Clement Street opening up before her in the April light. Cole walked beside her. Ranger moved between them, slightly ahead as always, reading the sidewalk with his nose. They passed the hardware store, the bakery, the street lamp on the corner, all of it ordinary and present and exact. "Cole," Sophie said, without stopping. "Yeah." "You're going to be at my first session with the walker, right?" Cole looked at her. "If you want me there," he said. "I want Ranger there," Sophie said. "You can come too." He did not respond to that immediately. "Generous," he said. "I think so," Sophie said. Rachel was standing in the doorway of the shop when they came back. She had a coffee in each hand. She gave one to Cole when he reached the door, and then she watched Sophie navigate the power assist over the small threshold lip with the careful, practiced confidence of someone who had been doing it for 11 days and was no longer worried about the lip. Sophie disappeared into the back room, the wheels clicking over the old floor. Rachel looked at Cole. "She okay?" Rachel said. "She's good," Cole said. Rachel looked down the street toward the corner of Clement and Whitmore, and Cole watched her look and understood that she knew where they'd been standing, because she knew this street the way you know a street you've spent years on. She didn't say anything about it. She drank her coffee. The morning moved around them. A car, a bird, the distant sound of the river running high from the April melt. The maples. The spring light on the old buildings. The completely ordinary, unremarkable texture of a small town in the morning that contained, if you knew where to look, everything. "Danny called," Rachel said. "Yeah?" "He's got a family in Coos Bay. Single father, veteran. Daughter with spina bifida, 9 years old, insurance denied a chair upgrade." Cole looked at her. "I told him you'd call back this afternoon," Rachel said. "Okay," Cole said. "The case file's in your email." "Okay." She looked at him. "You didn't say you'd look at it," she said. "I'll look at it," Cole said. "I always look at it." Rachel nodded, looked at her coffee cup, then at the street. There was nothing more to say about it because there didn't need to be. The work was the answer to itself, and had been since the beginning, since the morning Ranger had stopped on a cracked sidewalk and refused to take another step forward until the thing that needed doing had been seen. Inside the shop, Sophie was talking to Ranger about the Antarctic book's 4th chapter, which apparently dealt with the specific mechanical challenges of polar sledging, and which Sophie had opinions about. Ranger's response was not audible from the doorway. Cole drank his coffee. Rachel drank hers. The spring morning held the town in its ordinary light, and Clement Street ran in both directions the way it always had. And at the corner of Clement and Whitmore, if you stood there and looked back toward the flower shop, you could see the green cursive in the window and the buckets of spring color on the sidewalk and the open door. And you could understand, if you were paying attention, that the distance between that door and that corner was not very far at all. That it was, in fact, exactly as far as it needed to be, and no further. The people who change your life rarely announce themselves. They're just the ones who stopped when everything in their day said, keep moving, and decided that what was struggling behind them mattered more than wherever they were going.